they might mind games it. They might see that Molf has come through and immediately have the sort of like alerts that we're getting right now of the potential of a D.Va or a Sigma, and we might actually see a swap away from the Pharah towards the Echo, who can take more advantage given the fact that, you know, Beam doesn't get stopped through defense matrix, and if the D.Va does aggressively try and get in the Echo's face, you are just putting yourself in more danger.
I mean, you talked about it before, though, Mox, too. Like, yesterday, I remember we were there on the Echo, and you were it was like a little weird, right? Because you would want to see more of that Pharah, right? Because it was just like doing better than the Echo was. Like, you'd think the Echo would be good, but at times where the Echo is good, it's like Pharah does the same thing, but maybe a little bit better, marginally better.
Peps, by the way, are running an entirely different strategy. Molf is actually coming in, not the D.Va or the Sigma. They're actually running the Hammond. Naga is going to be coming in on the Echo. We already know that he's extraordinarily gifted at both the Pharah and the Echo, as well as being able to flex onto a majority of other DPS roles. Calyx is going to be onto that Mercy the Pocket. Twisted Minds are running LBBD on that Cassidy, so they are going to have hit scan to be able to counter it. And with Yubi coming on with the Mei rather than the Tracer, it is going to be a lot harder for this Hammond composition to really find its feet.
Yes, and we have LBBD, by the way, back on the cast. He's been playing it a lot more as of late. Just playing this high ground is Twisted Minds. Opt to play it slow, wait for Team Peps to kind of make that engagement first. Usually we see Twisted Minds, you know, with the shoe on the other foot here, where Twisted Minds drop towards that point. KSA opts to just try to pressure that backline. Meanwhile, anti-grenade comes out, lands onto LBBD, but gets that Drunk Queen shot. Meanwhile, Yubi low, doesn't have any cooldowns, but gets those heals. Immortality field committed a bit late, but it's perfectly timed, actually. No health pack available, though, for Slay. Hybrid gets LBBD. And Team Peps, they actually take fight number 1.
Yeah, look at all of that control that Molf has in that fight, by the way. 3 members of Twisted Minds, the only 3 members who survive, chase after that Hammond, and now we are going to see the adaptation to come through. Twisted Minds did not expect Peps to start off with that composition. They were not prepared to deal with it. Now we're going to see Yubi go onto the Tracer, LBBD go onto the Echo, and KSA, most importantly, going on to that D.Va. But Naga on the Echo rather than the Pharah has the interaction we talked about before. Beam does not get stopped by defense matrix, so as a result, the D.Va's just really going to be that appeal and to try and deal with Zerion. This Ana has been an absolute thorn in Twisted Minds' side.
Yeah, they're playing over the top side. LBD's looking for the back, but KSA's already lost mech to Naga on the opposite side. No heals were really available, and the Baby Diva's down. No Resurrect either available because this duel's happening in the sky, and it's actually LBD to come out on top. So no Resurrect available because his body is in the middle of the open unless this Wrecking Ball creates some space, but all of the mines land on that Mercy. LBD just showing his cracked nature on this Echo. Sleepstart attempted to come through, but Zero just playing his life while Hybrid and the rest of Team Peps clean up on this point, have 60%, even though LBD found that kill.
Like I said, Hybrid just has that star power at the moment. It's such a good engagement from Twisted Minds. They bait Calyx away from Naga so that LBBD with Nutella's Pocket can take out his mirror. But even though they're able to pressure the Ana with the Mercy having to fall back to the backline, Hybrid comes in and picks up a 2k. But Twisted Minds still aren't actually able to clear Team Peps off of that point, and as a result, the flip doesn't come through. Yubi is able to find Zerion with that Pulse Bomb, as Calyx now has to make the decision. Do you go for the res knowing it's going to be camped, or do you hold on with Valkyrie and think that you can sustain through with just the Mercy ult?
It appears to decide to just play it slow, just hold on. LBBD has gotten Hybrid, though, in the meanwhile, so that's another pick for them, and LBBD just cleans up on a Molf as well. Team Peps opting to wait it out, not committing the ultimates. Only a Pulse Bomb used in that last fight.
They're going to have Nano Boost in this next fight as well. That's going to be something that Twisted Minds have to keep a very watchful eye on. Here we can see that stick come through. Yubi on the Tracer just has 1 mission and 1 mission alone. Molf not on that D.Va means that the peel isn't there for the Ana. And Calyx can't just abandon Naga because that opens the door for LBD to be able to win against the other Echo. So there is a vulnerability for Peps' composition. Something that Yubi is looking to again take advantage of, but this time it's Slay. The Ana is the focus, and Twisted Minds are working together to make sure that she's always gone.
And he can always back out of there too, right? The Slay can just TP back towards his team. So now, Yubi on that front line is pressuring the Wrecking Ball. Molf is the one to come out on top, though, so Yubi's already gone. Now in this fight, it's on to LBD, but he needs to track down Naga, in which he eventually does so. Now the Valkyrie is used. Doesn't go for the immediate Resurrect. Pulse Bomb tries to land on an Echo. Could not be found. Now the Resurrect comes late for the nature there, so he does lose his life for that res. Meanwhile, the D.Va Bomb happening on the point. Hybrid takes down KSA, who was trying to remech. Also gets rid of Slay, so there's that star power that you mentioned earlier truly coming into fruition. And now LBD on this backline, Zero trying to play his life, but his track tracked down by LBD, and you can't take him out, but you do flip the point. So now LBD opts to swap and get that copy onto the Tracer, and T-Peps decide to back it up. They give that point back to TM.
No, they don't give the point away. They just temporarily go away so they can get the resurrection onto Zerion. They've got two supports back in this fight. Twisted Minds are onto the panic swaps. KSA onto the Doomfist, Nutella onto the Lucio just to try and keep it tapped because they still haven't been able to regain control. Peps immediately pushed back into overtime, and Hybrid so close to a pulse bomb takes down KSA. No one from Twisted Minds touches.
I can't in that situation, and now you're going to that round number 2. Team Peps already. Moxie, they talked about those adjustments with Krondop, and it truly looks like they've made some amazing ones.
Honestly, the nano boost onto Hybrid so he can pick up 2 when Zerion goes down. Again, Team Peps have an understanding. If they lose one of their backline, all they have to do is create a focus and distraction large enough that Twisted Minds can't take advantage of an absence, and giving it to the Tracer is absolutely perfect because you have the blinks, you have the recall, you have that damage reduction with the nano boost. You're doing so much damage and you're so hard to hit. Twisted Minds without a Cassidy, since they're leaning into a Tracer and Echo of their own, can't take Hybrid down, and the flip can't come through.
Yeah, they opt to run the same composition as well, where Team Peps did a great job just trying to counter this diva. It seems like KSA just simply not as mobile, by the way, as Mulf, who's been able to follow up on Hybrid shots. And you talked about Mulf being a difference maker in the previous matchup where he did not get subbed in. Now is really proving his worth. So kind of a neutral game fight. In the meantime, Peps just playing in the main, waiting things out, opting to play this Echo duel in the sky, just kind of play it slow while Mulf objects or tries to take the objective, but Yubi is there with the follow-up, and Twisted Minds take the first cap.
Yeah, Twisted Minds have the better positioning when it comes to that fight. LBBD gets so much pressure onto Peps' backline. Mulf is actually going to go off the Hammond onto that Diva. This is where verticality is absolutely king, right? You can already see Twisted Minds putting so much focus into holding down this position. LBBD can use that shift to be able to break over the rooftops and still apply a lot more pressure. As Team Peps, without control of that high ground, have to take the back angle approach, and that means there's no cover to hide in. LBBD chases after, picks up the Echo, but does overextend and goes down to the Tracer.
Yeah, that's going to be a resurrect there for Kelix as well if he so needs to. But now Yubi on the Mulf on the front line gets that follow through damage, and even after trading it, it wasn't enough. Man, LBBD is so good with these grenades, isn't he?
And the fact that he was able to kill Naga over the ocean as well means that even though he did go down, Kelix didn't get the opportunity to be able to res and equalize the numbers and even push Team Peps' advantage even further. So Twisted Minds once again pushing that Mercy back a little bit too early in the fight, by themselves past halfway on this point.
Now, but going for that duel again. He's so confident in trading with these Echo duels, and it's so hard to play them as well. But Zerion, in the meanwhile, gets that pick off onto Yubi. We've seen it before when he was on that Kariko. Get those early picks. Also finds Slay, so the French Prodigy coming through, finding those 2 kills, gets onto those 2 supports, and now Peps just take this point back.
Yeah, Zerion, you can really see, has a lot of hours in Zen, and so knows exactly how to land those headshots. Team Peps finally going to be able to take control of this point. They've got a Pulse Bomb, they're going to have a Valkyrie, as well as a Duplicate to be able to work with, but they have to be so very careful about their positioning. They can't really hold as aggressively as they want on the high ground at the moment, because KSA has self-destruct. And if they hold out on the high ground, they don't have cover to be able to break away from it when it comes out.
And now Naga over that point side, just pressuring onto KSA, trying to build to that copy. He's going to have it in just a second. Meanwhile, Tracer's looking for pulse bombs on both sides, but Hybrid not able to find anything just yet. Now finds the rest of the team, sees that Slay had the teleport. Instead, opts to fight this Tracer duel on the left side. Meanwhile, on the skybox, Naga trying to take in that pressure. Kitsune rush, disengage is not good enough to save Kelix's life. He goes down to LBBD. Mulf decides to pop that D bomb, even down that Mercy, who can come back with that Valkyrie, who commits the other Valkyrie on the offside is Nutella. LBD again finds Naga because he's down his Mercy, gets onto Zerion. That's a 3K for him. Slay finds the final blow onto Hybrid, and that's a point swap for Twisted Minds.
Yeah, unfortunately for Kelix, it looked like he was just actually kept away from Guardian Angeling to Naga, who had actually gone towards the ocean view to try and provide the Mercy a safe exit under all of that focus fire. And as a result, without that support, Zerion is forced to use that Kitsune Rush to try and equalize. As Team Peps do manage to find a first opening pick onto Slay, but the resurrection comes through from Nutella, and the Kiriko is immediately back. Team Peps are able to get a duplication, however, and will have a rush of their own, now that Twisted Minds don't have one to be able to try and counter.
Yeah, Naga goes for that copy, then teleports back to the rest of his team in it, but can't find anything. Unfortunately, he's out of the copy. Meanwhile, Molf loses his mech, and Valkyrie is finally gone, so Peps have no ultimates here, and it's entering overtime territory, so LBBD got rid of Molf as well. You have no more name tag. Naga's gonna have to go absolutely ham, but it's hard to do so while LBBD is just doing his stuff on the outside, and Yubi. Kelix is gone. Naga is gone. Twisted Minds, it looks like we're going to that map around number 3, and we are.
It's always about the star power in these matchups, isn't it? We heard from the members of Peps that they knew it would be a DPS focus coming through from Twisted Minds. LBBD, this kill is what allows Twisted Minds to win the fight. The amount of percentage that they're able to pick off by finding that pick onto the Echo and forcing Peps into waiting, eating into the percentage, but also eating into the uptime of poke damage, thus affecting ultimate charge overall, just means that they never really get to fully reset. And even when they're in control of the point afterwards, they still don't get that poke phase that they're looking for to be able to try and push their ultimate economy ahead of Twisted Minds. Moving into University, now we're potentially going to see adaptation movement away from the Echo or the Farah, simply because of the ceiling. But Team Peps decide, okay, we're going to go back to this Echo, we're going to think that they're running Cassidy. As a result, we're going to be able to try and win that poke phase just by playing further away so that the Junker Queen doesn't find the value.
Yep, and this kind of goes back to, oh my, okay, Yubi, early pick on the hybrid too, so before, you know, Team Peps could even get that surround, they now get pushed on by Twisted Minds who get that opening pick. Point is going to flip soon. Hybrid's going to have to come back from spawn, but this is kind of like the old Overwatch mentality where a lot of it comes down to map geometry. Early immortality field committed from Slay gives them that point from Twisted Minds. They don't have the immortality field now, so Hybrid's back in the fight is going to be an absolute nuisance as they try to hunt him down. Zerion on the point, just spamming away. Yubi looking for the right clicks. Can't really find them just yet, but as long as they're regrouped as a unit, they should be fine until they lose LBBD. Off of the go button was pressed by Molf. He does lose his life, however, but it might be too late for Twisted Minds because they're down literally everybody.
Yeah, Molf just boosts in and entirely denies Twisted Minds the hit scan setup to keep Naga in check. With the Cassidy's position removed, he gets to push forward super aggressively, and look at the amount of ult charge he's able to pick up in just one engagement. 84% to the next duplication. Hybrid, by the way, 8% away from Pulse Bomb. Twisted Minds not going to be swapping. They're going for an Echo against an Echo. The problem is they have to get through a Pulse Bomb that's already packaged for Hybrid to try and land onto a specific player. Sees a defense matrix and disconnects.
Okay, we're good. No, we're good. Just the observer. He's Zero got his KSA and he loses his life as well as the mech. Peps reflipped that point. Resurrect came through on a Baby Diva. Could he get his mech back in the situation? It looks like he is. So now he's back in the fight. And Kelix is not, though. So he still goes down. Peps are actually losing this pretty bad in this situation. They have to use that Diva Bomb on the back side. But can he get his mech back? No, he cannot. He's down as well. And Twisted Minds with a fast recontest. Oh. You would have thought that maybe they would have taken that duel earlier between LBBD and Naga instead of playing that cast. But regardless, they got the point back.
I mean, again, I think they were expecting to be able to control that Echo with the Cassidy, right? You could already see in the early engagements of LBBD keeping Naga in check. It isn't until Molf takes the fight into side room that we really do see the Cassidy not having that line of sight. But now that it is going to be that mirror Echo versus Echo, the advantage really does go to Twisted Minds in the fact that they're controlling this point. The problem for them is ultimates are against them. Naga already has that duplication. Slide does have a Kitsune Rush. The Peps again are so mobile, they can just back away from it. All it's really going to do is buy point percentage for Twisted Minds.
Naga still playing around that backside. You're right, that point percentage still going up for Twisted Minds, and they have so many ultimates, so the moment Peps tries to commit something, the counter is going to come from Twisted Minds, or they go first with that Kitsune Rush, in which they do so. Slay decides to commit it on the low ground. Peps, again, opts to disengage it, but they're still in this fight, kind of, and it causes Molf to lose mech and his life too, so now he's on the fight. No Resurrect available from Kelix. Although they have that Valkyrie, they're opting to play it slow, but it results in them losing Zerion too, so they're kind of getting staggered in the situation when it's they can't afford to get staggered right now.
Yeah, Hybrid is going to be able to come in with a pulse bomb in this next fight, but we're in final fight territory. Naga is going to have a duplication. I would like to see it come through either onto KSA so you can self-destruct and just zone out Twisted Minds or Slay. But Naga is able to find the pick onto LBBD. KSA, however, with the boosters takes down the Mercy Pocket, and the Echo is so much more vulnerable, so much more reluctant to keep touching onto this point and keeping that overtime activated as Slay comes in with a free cake, including that D.Va mech. There's the duplication onto the D.Va so that you can try and just keep yourself in this fight and overtime contesting with that extra health from the tank. But Team Peps just don't have any ultimates once that burns out. There's no killing potential from this team.
Yeah, but they'll have people come back in a second. Molf's almost here, and Hybrid got Yubi. So the DPSs are putting an absolute carry job right now, but Slay shuts him down again. Is that like 5 kills, 5 final blows for Slay in that one fight just to get those headshots is absolutely crucial. Kitsune Rush is too little, too late, and unfortunately, Molf lost his life a little bit too much there. KSA with the follow-through onto LBB and a little bit of a copy synergy there. Twisted Minds take that map number 1.
There are 2 schools of thought for these teams. Twisted Minds obviously put so much faith in their DPS, and like you can absolutely see why, but Slay, honestly, it's just absolutely killer with the kunai. But when it comes to Peps' side, they do have stellar DPS. We've seen that Hybrid can be an absolute monster when he's given the space. The problem is that they rely super heavily on Molf to be the one that instigates on that D.Va mech, and what Twisted Minds have seen is that it's a D.Va mech and they're running an Echo. So every single time there's pressure from Slay to just pull out the defense matrix very early on with those kunai, and then LBBD just gets to go in and chunk through that D.Va. First with the stickies and then with the beam. It really felt like Molf, unfortunately, especially on University, was outside of the mech more than he was in it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a great call, because for Molf, it's, you know, he got subbed in now, and throughout the tournament, it's been a little bit dicey on if he's going to come in or not, right, Mox? I mean, for now, at the same time, coming in, having to match versus KSA, that's a pretty hard challenge to do, right? And then on top of that, you have to deal with crazy support play, like I mentioned, from Slay, just playing his line phenomenally. By the way, I'm surprised that guy's not in Overwatch League, playing absolutely amazing so far for Twisted Minds. And even though they lost that first round, to have that mental fortitude to come back and take the other 2 rounds versus Peps, who are surely feeling confident after that first one, shows great for Twisted Minds, who needed that map number 1. That's the start of our series.
Yeah, I mean, it is, again, all about that adaptation, right? You can see that Twisted Minds were a little bit thrown with Molf coming through so early on, and it did take them that first round to really download the strategy and how Peps like to play this, because a lot of the time, like we do see, teams with that dive, they either heavy commit in and play very much NA style of super aggro, not a lot of downtime, constantly pushing your opponents to being very uncomfortable and not knowing when they're going to have to reposition for that dive to come through. Or we play it a little bit slower and you wait for everything to be on the table. If you use resources to get out of spawn, you wait for them to be back online and you play into it, waiting for your opportunity to strike. Very similar to, you know, Anna's wanting to wait until Nano Boost is online, D.Va's waiting until, you know, they've been able to boost someone away from that team to allow that Echo to have that space. And that is very much how Peps were operating. They were looking for that moment on University. They wanted to have control of that high ground so they could try and push that Cassidy out. But only when we see that dive and the boosters come through from Molf do the team actually initiate in for the full dive, as opposed to just stepping away and going for the poke damage. That's something that we recognize because we get to see it. That's also something that Twisted Minds recognize, because from that moment onwards, they never allow Peps that downtime, that lull, to set anything really major into motion.
No, yeah, they haven't. But now on Blizzard World, it might enable them to play that style, like you mentioned, to actually be able to kind of rotate around, play it a little bit slower. Because, yeah, I mean, you're against LBBD on that onto that Echo, so it's very hard to actually set anything freaking up, because that guy's just doing the world on Echo. He just does so freaking much. But now he's actually looks like is being subbed out in this situation, Moxie. Twisted Minds opting to sub in Quartz in a second. We'll show you guys. It looks like, well, actually, wait, potentially not. So Twisted Minds actually made, it looked like they were teasing a Quartz sub in. I mean, we never know with these guys, simply because, I mean, they have that bench player. We might as well talk about him now, right? They have Quartz on the bench, who has been a standout hit scan. In the meanwhile, you have somebody that's just as good as Quartz on hit scan, if not better, on that Echo and Pharaoh role.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking about Quartz, speaking about previous contender seasons, Quartz was on O1 Esports alongside Yubi. They are very much used to having to go toe-to-toe with Hybrid. Hybrid was one of our standout Sojourns from last season, and so we were sort of expecting him to maybe retain that role. But as we've seen, the Sojourn lock-in has sort of moved away from being a perma-pick, and instead the DPS role is a lot more fluctuated and up into the air. What we could potentially see, however, is Krondop to come through. He is currently, quote-unquote, in queue. He might be pulled in for Team Peps for this map, but I still would rather to see Molfig. Just because, again, like, Krondop coming through does mean that they're most likely going to play either the Reinhardt or the Winston. And again, those rotations are going to take a lot of time. And furthermore, it's going to play worse against the Echo. Because Blizzard World, when you're attacking that first point, a lot of high ground for a Reinhardt to try and navigate. And if you want to run that Reinhardt onto that point, you're not going to run straight past the statue and onto point. You're going to go all the way around the back of it and try and pop up on the defender's flank. If it works, brilliant. If it doesn't, you've eaten into a good 30 seconds of your time.
I guess for Team Peps here, right? I mean, they found success last game versus, a composition that was a little bit weird with that Reinhardt and that some of those switches. And unfortunately for Molf, you called it out, Moxie. It just seemed like he was always out of bank. They couldn't find a kind of ebb and flow, but maybe with more time they could have. But at the same time, we'll have to see what decisions they choose to make. And we'll look at Twisted Minds roster first. Subbing in Quartz. He's probably going to be on that, could be on a Cassidy, could be on the Ashe, could be on Widowmaker, right? This guy has pretty much every hit scan hero under lock. And in the meantime, on Peps' side, to make that tank swap, Moxie, I mean, that's probably going to that could end up for good for them or bad for them. What do you think, Moxie? You're leaning towards not so good versus a team like Twisted Minds?
So I think for Peps, like, they tried to put Molf in, anticipating something like that Pharah composition to come out. Because remember, Twisted Minds have normally been playing the Pharah over the Echo. And that was something I'm sure that Peps were anticipating. And we talked about it. The Pharah into the D.Va has a much better time, given that you can defense matrix all of the Pharah's attacks and put a lot more pressure on them having to go super aggressive in their positioning and putting them more into conflict with your hit scan to be able to take them out early, as opposed to the Echo, who has that beam and can just a lot of the time pop that D.Va out of the mech. It wasn't that Molf was playing badly, it's just that Peps decided to run the Echo instead of the Pharah, and that punishes the pick of the D.Va, but it can also punish the pick of the Sigma, because just like Sigma, just like D.Va, all of Sigma's like defensives really rely on either being able to hold up the shield, which, I mean, the Pharah is just going to be able to try and navigate around, or using that shift, which, again, very similar, the Echo is just going to be able to beam down very, very quickly through. So for Team Peps, this is probably the best decision they can make against something like that Echo.
Well, for Twisted Minds' side, Moxie, it feels like, I want to hear your opinion on this. Do you think KSA, does it even really matter what hero he's playing if you have the likes of, Quartz and LBBD kind of putting in all that pressure on the Team Peps?
I mean, I wouldn't say that because, again, it comes down to the fact that even though the DPS are the ones coming up in the kill feed, or rather, Slay is the one coming up in the kill feed, it's a lot of setup from the rest of your team. We even saw it on King's Row when these two teams matched up a couple of days ago. KSA swapped onto that D.Va to provide WBD the defense matrix so that the barrages would go through. Speaking, however, of swaps, Twisted Minds, this is probably expected from Peps. We've already seen KSA will return to that jungle queen if they want to try and deal with something like this Reinhardt rush. You do have the shout, so you can navigate around that Mei wall a little bit better, as well as self-sustain if you do get blocked out of it, which puts a lot of less pressure on Slay to be able to use Immortality Field. The cooldown that Peps are really wanting to bait out as soon as possible.
Right, they're rotating away. They want to be all the way on this backside to let this Cass do the work they need to do, but Twisted Minds, they're just taking all of this free space around the backside of the point, and oh my god, Quartz, SEA, taking out Naga early on, use that wall too, and just immediately out of the fight. You don't have your main now, 3 minutes and 15 seconds. It looks like they're going to move forward record fast time towards this first point. They take one tick. Team Peps trying to wait out until they get something back. Wait, they got Nutella. No Lucio here, no more speed boost, and you have this line to create some space here now.
Yeah, but the charge is blocked by a really good block coming through from Yubi. The Mei will up as well to keep this Reinhardt separated and isolated from his team. Quartz coming in with the pick onto Calyx. Buoyed up in confidence by the Immortality Field thrown to him by Slay. And this is still cleanup coming through from Twisted Minds. Even though they lost the Lucio, remember, they'd already reached the destination that they wanted to be. They didn't need that speed boost to try and disengage. Rather, they held their ground, fought on point, knowing that they had the better position, that Peps had to walk into them and had to walk into this Ashe already set up.
Yeah, and as long as you have quartz here on this Ashe, I mean, it's just going to always be very hard for you because he just doesn't miss. I mean, Moxie, would you like to see maybe Team Pep swapping Naga off the Mei, something more mobile to deal with quartz?
I wouldn't really, because Hybrid does have the means of being able to deal with him, right? Hit scan, and especially that 25-meter increase for the Cassidy does mean that you have the range to deal with the Ashe, and you want to keep the Mei because the Mei allows that Reinhardt a lot more confidence. If you find the isolation, you find the fight win. Speaking of, there it is. Charge into Nutella, picks up the Lucio amplification matrix to clear everything up, and Peps are able to slow the cart without letting it push too far into B.
4 minutes now, onto the second point. I guess for Twisted Minds, it's just always weird for me. I guess maybe this old head speaking where you see like a Mercy with the Ashe or something just to give her that support. And, you know, because you have that BAP and Lucy, you don't have as much support. But when you have Slay on this BAP, he's just doing everything, right?
Yeah, remember as well that like Quartz has the dynamite, and you can see it coming through on Peps. They don't have a Suzu, they don't have a Kiriko. So the fact that they're taking so much damage from Tick, including a Rampage from KSA, means that every single time either Dynamite or Rampage hits, they have no way of cleansing it. As a result, Peps just have to let the ultimates come out from Twisted Minds and decide to take a fight at a better position where they're going to have more ultimates, and Twisted Minds have already expended a lot that they can use to zone out this Blizzard impact.
And in comparison to a team like EXO, Twisted Minds do a great job just focusing targets, getting them down fast. For Team Peps, they're going for these quick fights, right? They have ultimates, though, for this next fight, Moxie. They're going to have that Beat Drop, Shatter, Mei ultimate, and a High Noon. They opt to take that high ground towards the bridge. Twisted Minds kind of playing back, allowing Quartz to find some value here. But Hybrid, you mentioned it, Moxie. Early pick already onto him. That should shut them out. Everybody else for Twisted Minds on this cart, they look to commit ultimates. They drop that Mei ultimate on the cart, are sure to get Krondop, maybe even through this lamp. They get rid of Hybrid too, force a beat drop here, so this is a great situation for Twisted Minds to have just used that window in Mei ultimate, but Team Peps, they have control of the cart now. KSA opts to go forward, gets shattered immediately, but Nutella is able to get that beat drop off. Perfectly timed from him. And Naga is just trying to deal with KSA on the front line while Krondop deals with Nutella, but guess who's back? It's Quartz over the top side of the high ground. Can he actually add any impact, any value here? It doesn't look like it. Twisted Minds opt to back up, wait for Nutella to be back in this fight.
Yeah, the more important return to that fight, it's not Quartz, it's Hybrid. Yubi is able to find Zerion, so this should be a turnaround for Twisted Minds, knowing that the BAP is gone, the amp is out. But Hybrid uses that Deadeye, and there's no shield for Twisted Minds in place. Yubi tries to get a back cap, knowing that everyone's occupied in the high ground, but immediately Team Peps turn around, clock it, and immediately counteract.
Playing in that lamp as well to stop this Dynamite from killing him as well. So nice job from Twisted Mind, or from Team Peps to capitalize. Nice High Noon as well, like you mentioned from Hybrid. No shield. Twisted Minds looks like they're going to keep this competition to 2 minutes left here, Moxie.
Well, Twisted Minds are coming in with a Bob on this next fight, and Calix is a little bit away from that sound barrier. If Quartz can manage to thread the needle on this ultimate charge, Twisted Minds are going to have a lot of pressure on that payload as Krondop looks for a charge off of someone on the map. Doesn't manage to find the connection. Lamp drop from Slay, as it is going to be a lot of damage entering into that fight, given that they've taken the side angle approach, and Hybrid from the top ropes through Ant Matrix gets an absolute shooting gallery.
Yeah, what a time to come alive, and also for Krondop there on Reinhardt, like we said, has probably been the best, well, not probably, has been the best Reinhardt so far in the Pro-Am qualifiers, and really putting on a show today. 1 minute left now, Moxie. Twisted Minds, they have a few ultimates though.
Twisted Minds don't have the Bob, they will have the Rampage, and I think that's what Team Peps are going to be most worried about, given that they have no way of cleansing the Tick. There's the Rampage, they're going to try and push through with the Sound Barrier to sustain, but that just means that everyone's caught up on the high ground into that Blizzard. Sound Barrier wears out, and Twisted Minds, with that focus that we were talking about before, try and find the targets to be able to take down very, very quickly. Peps dropping a Blizzard, just trying to push Twisted Minds away from getting that objective, knowing that spawns are going to be a lot faster than the attacking side. Might have been able to turn this tide.
They might have, because Naga got Yubi, but Slay again found 2 kills there. They don't have their jump point though, so they're going to have to keep backing up now until KSA is back. Again, going through this low ground where Team Peps taking full advantage of the high ground.
23 seconds left. Twisted Mind's going to have to try and figure out how they want to engage. They don't want to go main, because Hybrid is so close to that Deadeye and Zerion so close to Ant Matrix. The problem is that by waiting this long for the engagement, they're putting themselves into a position where they're walking into 3 ultimates about to be online, and one of them's going to have to pressure the card eventually. Someone's got to drop down to the low ground and walk into one of these ults from Peps.
Naga drops to deal with KSA. KSA is the one in low ground. High noon again. Just going to look right at KSA. Stop that Jungle from doing anything, but he can't get the kill. Window used. Now they finally get that kill onto KSA. They try to Maywall him off, but it's too little too late. In Team Peps, they might have cracked the code on Twisted Minds. High noon just counters whatever Jungle Queen could attempt to do, and they stop Twisted Minds in the streets phase.
Yeah, by Twisted Minds just posturing up and not really poking away at Peps on of that high ground, waiting for the overtime to come through, in the hopes that they're going to be able to punish a poor reposition from Peps when they drop down from the low, or rather, from Peps when they drop down from the high ground to the low ground. They do eat into their ultimate charges overall, and Team Peps, they just play patient. Hybrid waits for that Deadeye to be online, uses it as they drop down, so no one from Twisted Minds can actually push if anyone's left behind and away from that Reinhardt shield. Then we see the Amp Matrix followed up from Zerion. UB tries to wall it, but unfortunately it comes through a little bit late, and the angle is ever so slightly off. So all of those members from Twisted Minds that are waiting on that left flank away from the Amp Matrix can't cross towards the payload and help out their teammates there. And very quickly it just becomes an absolute cleanup.
What a smart game plan for Team Peps. I mean, to just continually use the high. I bet, Moxie, I bet people are going to be like, there's a few people probably in chat, they're like, you know, High Noon, best ultimate in the game now. You know, but to
best
get that
ultimate
value,
when they're running into a Junker Queen. There is no shield. And with the hyper armor as well, like you can see that KSA is trying to get aggressive to deal with Hybrid so that he either soaks up all of the damage or takes the Cassidy out before the ult actually triggers.
Yeah.
But the hyper armor that Cassidy is afforded means that he can literally just sustain through the Junker Queen swings.
it's working out so well for Team Peps to Zerion to give that support to Hybrid. I mean, this is the French prodigy, some might say the Mbappe of Overwatch, and Twisted Minds on this defensive side, Moxie. How do they adjust to deal with Team Peps now?
Well, they decided they're going to stick with the Junker Queen composition. Quartz once again going to be running on the Ashe. Team Peps decide they're going to take a very long rotation themselves, counter wall for wall from both of these teams. Now we do get that little bit of downtime, a lull, as both of them wait for that cooldown to be back online. Roundup, however, knows that the main wall isn't going to be available for Twisted Minds and decides to get aggressive. He's out of choke without being isolated from his team.
And they're giving that space there to Hybrid to find Slay on that backline. No more BAP lamp here available for the other side. UB does trade back Zerion, so both Baptiste out of it, but also Quartz is gone. And that's a lot of your damage. So now Peps move forward, capture this point after very clinical attack. That might have even been faster than TM's.
There was so much trust as well in Team Peps for making that decision not to wait for Naga's cooldown to come back online, but to push in knowing that Twisted Minds didn't have a wall of their own, so that if their DPS were able to take control of that high ground and put Hybrid in a position where he's just able to free fire into Twisted Minds who are below and don't really have a chance to verticality, they can just win with wall. As now we see the Junker Queen come through, Ice Block from Naga will save himself, but puts Kellex in too far a position forward, and the Lucio gets taken down.
Nice
Lamp
job.
gets invested as well, so Twisted Minds have been able to push Peps back at least for a little while.
Yeah.
Or even longer. Another 30 seconds on the clock. And another, as Quartz hits those shots.
He do be hitting, though. You know, he let him cook, as some of our boys would say on the other broadcasts. You know, got doorcasts. Let him cook! Let him cook door. And meanwhile, Peps on the opposite side have High Noon, have that window. Twisted Minds, they've been doing a good job here, Monksy. 4 minutes and 40 seconds, however, though. Pretty much 2 fights. They actually they control this space, drop that window aggressively, take out KC again. He could not even run. I love Junker Queen, but my God, is it getting, you know, rolled right now?
I think KSA was waiting around that corner to try and get a surprise rampage to connect onto the members of Team Peps. Like, you want the close fight because there's a May and Reinhardt in place, so you could potentially get walled off from your teams that the rampage doesn't connect. But as a result, he was way too far forward. He gets isolated from his team, and no one from Twisted Minds, because they're trying to play that high ground strength, is available to save him in time. And without a tank, it very quickly just becomes stagger picks. So speaking about stagger picks, here's Hybrid with a Deadeye, and he connects onto Nutella.
This guy's crazy, man, pulling out the most ridiculous High Noon plays. He got Nutella, but at what cost? His life. That's the answer. Now Naga tries to back up, down Hybrid. 3 minutes and 40 seconds left. That was a crucial ultimate to kind of get rid of there for Twisted Minds. Now they have that rampage and don't really have to worry about anything but the Shatter and May ultimate.
Yeah, Hybrid doesn't have that Deadeye to be able to zone, as well as he doesn't have control of this high ground at the moment. So Quartz gets the perfect angle to be able to just use that dynamite to try and connect onto all of these members being funneled, as long as you can land it over that Reinhardt shield. There's the attempt, and there's the tick.
Yeah, that window drops off. Team Peps from the high ground. Down goes to the lower. But, you know, we've seen the value of this defensive high ground drop, though. They give it up. Now that May ultimate comes out, they want Krondop, but he wants him too bad. He loses his life because of it. Zerion has a perfect lamp around the corner so that Krondop can stay alive, and they can't even get Naga in the peak drop. It's perfectly timed as well to keep pushing on forward. Hybrid with the very skillful impact grenade onto KSA. The cart is pushing towards the final checkpoint. Can anybody even touch? Yes, UB touches last second, but he's immediately slam dunked by Hybrid, and nobody else can touch. Team Peps to finally take a map off of Twisted Minds, equalize the series 1-1 in this first of 4.
Saren is being an absolute star in this match. My goodness. The Blizzard comes through, the freeze connects onto Krondop, but we see the immortality field come through. So everyone, including KSA, knows that you can't really push aggressively forward. You're not going to be able to pick the Reinhardt up in time before that freeze has gone. So they instead turn their attention towards the Mei, but Calyx is able to land that sound barrier. The block is there. We see Naga use the ice block, buy himself as much time as possible. The block comes out. KSA then goes for the Carnage, knowing that he's going to be able to land the connection, but that has allowed Calyx to get in position to land the sound barrier. And so even though we saw both Krondop and Naga in very, very bad positions when it came to that Mei Blizzard, they still don't go down, and they still actually pull KSA out of position.
You know, I'm surprised about as anybody that this match is going the distance, or not going the distance, but at least Team Pep seems like they might have cracked the code on Twisted Minds, Moxie. Would you agree? Have they finally, you know, stopped the dominance that has been TM this entire tournament?
Well, the thing is, they've dealt with the Ashe composition.
Yes.
We've seen that they can deal with the Ashe composition. We're yet to see whether or not this has been able to crack the code on the Echo/Pharah. And for Twisted Minds, now that they get the opportunity to pick the map and potentially sub that Echo and Pharah back in, you can bet that the communication right now in that team comm is like, do we go back to this because we know it worked? Or do we try and continue with this, which is a little bit more important and getting value all around the edges, as opposed to the Echo, which has bursts of impact, bursts of importance, but can very quickly be waylaid if Hitscan can continuously hit their shots. And with how well Hybrid has been hitting his shots today, I would be a little bit reluctant to rely as heavily on that Pharah and Echo as I was on previous days.
We'll have to see how Team Peps continues forward and Twisted Minds to see if they swap back in LBBD. But guys, we'll go into a short break. When we come back, we'll have that map number 3, so do not go anywhere for this grand finals matchup.
Get up off the ball and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Come on, everybody. up and dance. You know we came here to party. Get up off the wall and clap your hands. Just shut up and dance. Shut up and dance. Come on, everybody. Get over yourself, put your hands in the air, just shut up and dance. You know we came here to party. Get up off the wall.
Welcome back, everybody, to our Grand Finals Pro Am West qualifiers, and we have this matchup between Team Peps and Twisted Minds, and it looks like it's going the distance. We have to wait and see, though, right, Moxie? We've seen Twisted Minds drop maps before, so we don't want to fully overreact, especially since you said it. I mean, Quartz being able to adjust for Team Peps' sign towards that Ash composition has been vital, but can they make that extra step when Twisted Minds decide to sub in a little guy named LBBD?
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, we've seen Twisted Minds drop maps. Until today, we hadn't seen them drop maps against Team Peps. And I think a big part of that was that Team Peps have obviously been doing a lot of VOD reviews. A lot of VOD reviews. If you think about it, right, their matchup against Twisted Minds was yesterday. So they've had something like maybe less than a day, less than 24 hours to really be able to figure out a strategy and adapt around what Twisted Minds are running out with. A big part of it, obviously, was having lost control, not taking us to King's Row. I think that works out perfectly. Like, they didn't run into the Fire, they didn't run into the Echo. Blizzard World allowed Hybrid to really be able to take advantage of distance. That was something that we saw Quartz trying to take advantage of. High ground and those long angles that are available for the Ash. Hybrid decided instead to put a lot more value on the Cassidy, and we saw the results. They knew KSA would be running without a shield. They knew that Deadeye would be able to find a lot more value instead of just zoning them away. And it was off of some really good placements from those high noons that allowed Peps to really make a comeback on that map.
Yeah, good work from Hybrid and the sign of Team Peps, but now we'll be going to an escort map, Rialto, Moxie. And we've seen Rialto yesterday, and we saw, Team Peps do quite well on this map. So are you a bit surprised that Twisted Minds would choose such a map?
I mean, it's definitely got benefits and drawbacks to the composition that Twisted Minds could potentially want to run. Courtyard can be very, very strong for things like Hitscan, who are all the way in the back line and have that angle onto either a Pharah or an Echo, which is why we're not immediately seeing Twisted Minds subbing LBBD in. Instead, it does seem like Quartz is going to be sticking around a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And it is, however, going to be a swap to come through from Peps' side. Molf is going to come through, either to be able to set up that Hammond once again like we saw in Control, or maybe to go for something like the Sigma, where you can use that shield and make it a little bit harder for the high ground to have as much value. But there's the swap that we were waiting for. LBBD hops into Q and is more than likely going to be hopping into the DPS line for Twisted Minds.
I am curious to see how Team Peps does then, because on that map number 1, Molf unfortunately did take the L in that first map, and obviously, like you said, he's a very important, very crucial member of the side of Team Peps. But on the opposite side, to take that loss and then come in, you have Krondop come in map number 2 and get that victory. Now you have that same matchup that we had on map number 1, except it's on a little bit more open of a map with LVD coming in for Twisted Minds.
I think one thing, however, that Molf is going to do, however, is force LBBD away from playing this Echo composition, especially if Hybrid is running the cast, right? The Echo needs to be able to get close to be able to use that beam, and that's going to put them into the distance of things like the Magnet to come out from the Cassidy. You would much rather see something like the Pharah to come through, and that does mean that Molf is going to have just a little bit more play around as opposed to being beamed down by the Echo. You can potentially use either the Diva Defense Matrix or the Hammond's Mobility, or even the Sigma Shield, to be able to really get in the face of that Pharah, block off the ultimate, and make it a lot harder for Twisted Minds to be able to sort of springboard off of all of the space that LBPD creates. Because remember, if everyone from Peps is trying to deal with either a Pharah or an Echo, it gives a free pass to KSA, but more importantly, it gives a free pass to Slate. And we've seen what happens when this guy gets even a meter of free room. He absolutely turns it and takes it into an absolute mile.
Yeah, I'm going to be scared on the side of Team Peps' side, and I just like the conversation that we have. I feel like I should inform the viewers about what's happening in the in-game chat as well. I like how, so immediately LBBD gets subbed in, right? And there's an in-game chat everybody knows. So UB starts hyping up his boy, starts saying, the GOAT just joined the lobby, the GOAT! And then he's like question marking because, you know, obviously Team Peps aren't responding to that because it's like, what are you saying, dude? But then UB's like, you going to respond? The GOAT just joined the lobby. You guys not gonna say hello to the GOAT? And then you got Zerion on the other side that said Mbappe's actually the GOAT. Excuse me. And then they're like, who? No, it's LBBD. LBBD's the GOAT. Which honestly, so far, Moxie, in this matchup, LBBD really has put on an MVP performance whenever he's in.
Yeah, we may be hearing the lovely backup music of Rialto, very nicely, calmly, atmospheric. But what Team Peps are hearing at the moment is boss music starting up. LBBD sits atop the throne, waiting to see if he's finally going to be challenged by Team Peps.
The spawn doors are like the fog in like Dark Souls. Like they come through and you got LBBD on the other side. Except imagine whenever LBBD's in the lobby, his hitbox is just 2 times the size. He's just double the size. That'd be so terrifying. But we do have a DC on the side of Team Peps, so they'll have to come back into the lobby. And I mean, we have an exciting matchup. The players are excited as well because yeah, Twisted Minds did drop that last map. They did drop Blizzard World. They're a little bit, you know, on the backside or on the back foot against Team Peps, who look like they have the momentum.
Yeah, when the Pharah comes in and hits the rocket so hard, it unfortunately takes out your internet router. That's what's happening at the moment, and that is what Twisted Minds are going to be running out with, most likely. Right? Nutella is one of those Mercies who has been known to just be that pocket. LBBD has made a name for himself. Yes, his Echo is stellar, but he is most well known for his Pharah. I would say he's maybe only second to Yazan, and even then, he has these days, these moments, where he sometimes seems even better. It feels like it's a constant tussle, a to and fro between those two players. Who is the best Pharah in T2?
Be careful, Moxie. I mean, the fans of LBBD and it feels like Yazan are constantly going back and forth. I see people like you say Yazan might be the best, you say LBBD is the best.
That's the true chat poll. That's the true chat poll that we need to see whether or not who is the best Pharah, who has
their fans
the biggest
rabid.
fan base.
They are rabid. They are mad anytime you say the other one is better, but you know, both are equally fantastic players in their own right, right?
Kelix is actually just using a brick shield at the moment to allow Hybrid the opportunity to not be too tapped as he sets up for the initial shots of the Widowmaker before swapping over. They thought about going for the Cassidy. They decided out of it.
Yeah.
Mob is sticking on the Diva. Naga is going over onto that Echo to play against this Pharmacy. Try and keep LBBD's attention away from the backline, most specifically away from Zerion on the Ana, who's going to be a little bit more vulnerable for that drop down 2-tap potential. Hybrid on the Tracer just going to try and be as mobile as possible. It's essentially a mirror. Only the real thing, the difference between the Echo and that Pharah, that we're going to see having such an impact on how these divas play.
I mean, only these Pharah players are that confident to go for mid-air skyrocket shots on the other Echo. Meanwhile, UB down on the low ground in their own Tracer duel. There's like 3 different fights happening. The core unit, then that Pharah Mercy duel, and then you have this Tracer duel going on at the same time. So a lot of different things happening. Meanwhile, Mulf already sees LBBD, but he's waiting. He doesn't really want to go. He wants his Echo to be set up in a position, but at the same time, this Pharah spam onto Zerion is going to keep putting him in a lot of danger. And at the same time, on the flank, Hybrid's going, but now Mulf opts to go, commits that button, but now he's out of mech already, got slept mid-air, and now his life is lost. No more Baby Diva. Tracer trying to go for that kill on the Nutella. Hybrid finds it, really, and then Naga gets onto KSA's mech as well and also gets it, so now Peps are in the advantage.
Yeah, Hybrid is able to again come in, worm his way into that backline and push all of that composition, all of that order that Twisted Minds had, controlling that high ground and pressuring Zerion entirely into the ocean. As Hybrid already has a pulse bomb set up, Naga goes over the top, just trying to put even more pressure. They've spotted out Yubi, so they know what the Tracer's location is to be able to position Zerion outside of it. As, oh no, Hybrid! No! He finds the stick! Slay is gone!
Slay is not aware, man. I mean, at the time he was healing his team. Maybe didn't expect UB on the, or sorry, Hybrid on that flank. Perfectly timed pulse bomb. I mean, that's what happens on Ana, right? That's why I always suggest that when you can, you know, gotta unscope just simply because you're too tunneled. It's too easy to hit you with
Slay
a
is
bomb.
done. Slay is done with the Ana. He's going on to the Kiriko. He knows that he's going to be focused down by Team Peps. That hybrid is 100% every single day of the week. Going to come and try and find his position and land that pulse bomb. And Nutella has to stay on this Mercy to be able to damage boost the Echo. They can't just swap onto that Baptiste or to be able to lamp that when it comes on through. So the only other option is for Slay to either go into something like Moira with the Fade, but you don't want to play Moira with this composition. So the only other option is Kiriko with that Suzu.
Yeah, Moira unfortunately in a rough spot at the moment. Hybrid and KSA kind of dueling it out. Same with Yubi and Molf on the opposite side. We got a good angle over here. That Echo trying to play over that top side, just spam through those doorways. But looks for LBD. And LBD in the previous maps we've seen has kind of come out the victor with the duels with Naga. But now with Hybrid coming online on the Tracer, it's always worrisome. However, Twisted Minds have some ultimates. None committed just yet. This neutral game lasting very, very long. Hybrid is built for the Pulse Bomb. In the meantime, no Kitsune Rush, but every other ultimate besides Copy for LBD is online. Everybody's still playing this low. Yubi decides to drop that Pulse Bomb, but it's eaten. However, LBD again wins that duel versus Naga with some grenades on the opposite side. The Resurrect is sure to come through. The defensive matrix is there, and the Suzu. They commit a lot to that res, resulting in Zerion losing his life. So now they have no Resurrect. The Diva Bomb to zone here. They do get KSA's mech, but it gets the Diva mech back, and now they do have that Valkyrie going on. And Slay yet again! The pop-off Kiriko gets the kill on the Hybrid. Now dealing with Naga on the Copy, finds it as well, and that's going to force Team Peps back.
Like I said, Slay coming in with those kunais. Like, sometimes he's just always able to find that one clutch pick and make sure that Hybrid isn't able to keep that backline unfocused from their front. As Team Peps will be coming into this next fight with a couple of ultimates, but so too are Twisted Minds. And both of these traces have been so impactful, but the plus one from Yubi come out in this next fight could really make or break. It could bait out that Suzu extraordinarily early and set in place the motion for Twisted Minds to finally be able to commit to a pick. They commit with a Kitsune Rush. Team Peps hold on to one of their own until a little bit longer, so theirs is going to last far more than Twisted Minds, and it's forcing Twisted Minds into really awkward positions to be able to hold on and keep all of their players alive.
It is such a rough spot for Team Peps trying to cross this bridge here, Moxie. It feels like they can't even do it without losing Kelix's life. I mean, it's just too large of an area. It's actually... No, Hybrid can't live. They go onto the boat, unfortunately take his life. But now Twisted Minds, they're in a great spot.
Yeah, control of this bridge is the one thing that every single team attacking into Rialto has to deal with. The good news for them, however, is there's no Casti on the other side. So you're not getting constantly barraged by that hit scan. The bad news for them is that it allows LBBD so much more control in how this fight is set up. Yubi gets the time as well to look for those flank angles, ping out Team Peps' locations, allow LBBD to know where Naga is playing from so that Nutella gets positioned around not being caught up by the Echo, so that their Echo instead gets to hold super aggressively, and Team Peps instead just have to look for that poke phase, which eats into that time bank. They're down to a minute.
Now LBD commits though, looking for that Mercy, already spots Kelix out, has that copy, is hitting the shots with that damage boost. Meanwhile, Zerion drops from that high ground, super low, but so is Molf, so he dies, so does Molf, so no longer we have this Diva or that Kiriko. Zerion did trade back one, but Kelix, you can't get the Resurrect more than likely, you're surely going to fall. And now, we're entering last fight territory just for a Valkyrie trade.
Yeah, Kelix unfortunately didn't want to use that Valk to be able to escape. It's one of the only ultimates that Team Peps are going to have already built up into this next fight. Slay is going to have that rush as well, so you do want that sustain from the Mercy as well as the ability to keep the Mercy up far longer. As Twisted Minds, we've seen, have been relentlessly pursuing this Mercy. They know that with the Mercy gone, the Echo becomes so much more easier to deal with.
Now Hybrid with this Pulse Bomb over the top side. Is he going to find that play that opens things up for Twisted Minds? It's hard versus a Suzu and the defensive matrix. He does force a lot of defensive matrix to be used, but there's nobody in the back line. In fact, it's just Yubi that he finds. The Kitsune Rush is committed, but Twisted Minds, they disengage it almost entirely. Actually, entirely. Now they're at the back of the bottom stairs waiting for their engagement. They pop their own Kitsune Rush on towards that cart, but the Pulse Bomb now from Hybrid. He's looking for it, but dealing with Slay has been an absolute nightmare for him. And Naga with a copy trying to find something, but it's too little too late. Molf loses his mech yet again. LBD finds it. LBD loses his mech in his copy form, but it doesn't really matter. But Naga with the copy Diva Bomb. He finds Yubi and he gets LBD in copy. Then he gets him after the copy. So now in overtime, somehow Team Peps off the back of a copy Diva Bomb can actually capture the Streets Veins.
Calyx was actually able to res Molf as well, so they're going to have another Diva Bomb to hold on for this next fight with, and as a result, Twisted Minds, like, they can't manage to scramble together a recontest. Team Peps in overtime off of a clutch play from Echo will be able to see that time bank increase. Not by a lot, but definitely by a larger margin than if they'd already have to go for that defense. Hybrid going to be going onto that Cassidy. Molf just holding on to that Diva Bomb. Maybe going to use it to throw into Twisted Minds' front line, allowing Team Peps to finally break through this choke.
Okay, Twisted Minds now playing back, building that Valkyrie. Molf with that Diva Bomb, like you said. 60 seconds left now. Let's see how long this fight lasts. It will impact the next one. So Slay looking for that front line. No teleport! He could not teleport after he used the Suzu, but Hybrid does get traded out by Yubi. Great job from him to trade out that back line pressure from Hybrid. Molf also taking a whole load of damage on that front line. Causes Molf to lose mech. They go for that fast reset to get another fight.
Nutella, by the way, still on this Mercy with that Valkyrie, was able to get the resurrection onto Slay, so this isn't the full pullback from Twisted Minds that Peps were looking to burn out for. Instead, this is Twisted Minds' full 5 players pushing into the respawning members of Team Peps, and again, not allowing them the time to be able to regroup comfortably and set in place a full push. It's going to be panic mode. 13 seconds left. Team Peps have to throw themselves onto the point. No one is going to be checking for Yubi. This Postman's going to be absolutely deadly.
From the back right, looking forward on that Kitsune rush from Zerion. Does he spawn anybody out? They came through the other angle, so he's not very close, but now he's looking for it. He's actually looking for the Tracer Duel more so, but at the same time, KSA just ate Naga's Pulse Bomb, and it's disengaged again. Twisted Minds, they do a good job disengaging Peps, but they're not coming back until now. KSA runs into Hybrid. We've seen that happen vice versa to LBBD, who was on the Cassidy before, but Kelix trades back Yubi, so that's a 1-for-1 after the beat drop runs out now. That Diva Bomb for KSA is going to be deadly. However, LWD goes for the copy. In the meantime, Slay! Nice shot on Naga with the melee to finally get rid of him. Now comes that Diva Bomb. No Suzu towards the point either, but the teleport comes through. Molf's Diva Bomb gets LBD in the copy down, who had his own Diva Bomb copy. KSA tried to go for his own too, but no value to be found besides some zonage. Now Hybrid on the flank, trying to find some body shots on LBD. Cannot get the kill, and it's just Kelix and Zerion to delay, which they cannot for any longer. Twisted Minds will stop them.
You know, if you ever want an argument with a person about why Slay is just the best support in EMEA, show them this round. Actually, show them this entire series. He's been doing such a good job. Especially when so much pressure goes out onto Nutella. Like, the fact that they're still running the Mercy Kiriko, as opposed to what Team Peps are running, there's so much burst healing for Team Peps. But Twisted Minds are still able to sustain, even though so much focus goes down for Nutella. Hybrid even tries to hunt him down when he's running on that Tracer. But the heals come through from Kiriko, and then he's just able to one-tap the Tracer into the melee kunai headshot. And even then, because he'd used Suzy previously, he's able to iframe time the Swift Step so that he keeps himself in the fight, doesn't move away from it, and moves back onto that card to better prop up everyone else who's still fighting against Team Peps. He's such a good Kiriko.
Disgusting. And on Team Pep side, right, they still have a very good support lineup of their own with Zerion on that. Rico, kind of like I mentioned earlier, that young, French prodigy, and his time is sure to come. Maybe it'll be this series, right? It depends. It's still up in the air. They got it quite far, Moxie. I mean, 2 points, not too shabby on Rialto when we see a lot of teams get stomped in that Streets phase.
Yeah, I mean, Team Peps need to send a thank you card to Naga. Let's be honest. Yeah. That payload almost stopped a little bit over halfway on B, but those 2 self-destruct kills off of that duplicate really allowed Team Peps a fighting chance on Rialto, a map that is known to be very defensively favored because of the checkpoints, because of all of the stopping spaces that you have by controlling that high ground. The most important thing for Peps is that if they start losing these fights, they have to give up that ground, pull back a little bit, and guarantee that they get to hold on to that high ground when they regroup, as opposed to being bullied out of it and losing to momentum off of Twisted Minds' pushes.
Now Twisted Minds trying to gain that momentum, like you said, around this backside flank. Yubi tries to set up that angle, really looking forward towards that Ana, who Zerion is on Ana instead of that Kiriko like he was last round. And on the front line, they're trying to pressure KSA during that 3 kind of core unit in the main. Zerion is Doapon now, had the nade for himself. Slay is back there, by the way, with his Tracer, so that's a great part with running this. Kiriko forces Team Pep so far back, and Slay gets Hybrid again.
Yep, here's what we were talking about, right? Giving up some of those positions. At least they're able to pull back. Team Peps will sacrifice that Ana, but they will contain and retain control of this high ground. Slay, however, still going to make it extraordinarily hard! Oh my god! Hybrid goes down in an absolute split
We are witnessing an absolute masterclass of a Kiriko game right now, and it's a flexible game in general. I mean, he's playing so good, but Hybrid will be back in this fight, and he's going to be back on Widowmaker. He does not want to deal with Slay anymore. He wants to rip the head off from Slay across the map, but he hits one again. Another Zen rank, or pretty much Zenyatta click through that window, but the point's not captured out just yet. Peps doing a good job kind of just holding this choke, playing it slow. They have that nano boost. They actually have an ultimate advantage, although they've been progressively losing space. They're not lost in the ult game just yet. They use nano boost on Wolf. The Kitsune rush happens. Zero now has to deal with Yubi on that backline, who drops the pulse bomb, but unfortunately it misses. Sidestep by Zerion. No dents just yet. Just the Diva v Diva duel on the card. Wolf decides to drop that Diva bomb. Nades come out onto LBD, who get him low, but no dents just yet. Hybrid still pumping out damage on Widowmaker into that backline. They finally scouted him out, but nobody could deal with this backline right now. Just too many heals from this Valkyrie.
Really good nano boost to make sure that Morph is able to survive and sustain in the middle of that Kitsune rush, allowing Hybrid to retain control of this high ground and put so much pressure on Twisted Minds they can't actively step onto that payload because they're walking into the Widowmaker. Likewise, they can't really deal with the Widowmaker because then they're giving away that frontline pressure that's keeping the other members of Peps back. Now we're seeing a duplication come through, LBBD opting for that Diva to use the self-destruct and push Team Peps away.
They're still fine though. Morph doing a good job playing his life on the front line, and Naga going underneath the bridge to play his life. Now KSA drops the Diva Bomb on the bridge. Everybody has to hide, but they cannot. KSA, fantastic placement after losing his mech. And they'll finally capture that first point.
It is going to be a little bit of stagger coming through. Hybrid throwing himself off of the map to not allow ultimate charge or the Widowmaker to be staggered out away from the rest of their team. And this is where it gets a little bit dicey because Team Peps can't really run the Widowmaker anymore. Not with Twisted Minds being able to push this payload and take over that high ground. Instead, they have to go for the more mobile composition and bite into the backline that Twisted Minds are running.
Yeah, and this is where the Feifei and the boys, the supporters of Peps, are a little bit worried for them, but they're in a great spot, right? 3 minutes left. But a sticky bomb from Yubi doesn't find anything, actually, because of that Suzu from Zerion, who swapped over towards that Kiriko, and now Naga on the opposite side finds the better end of that trade with LBD, but the Resurrect comes through. Kitsune Rush from Slay is committed, and now Peps have no ultimates. They're surely going to fall here, but it depends on how far this cart goes forward, because a recontest on this street space is very hard.
Yeah, it's going to be Team Peps playing from that high ground. You can see Calyx actually even committing that Valkyrie to keep everyone topped off, knowing that Morph is so close to that self-destruct. And they will be able to throw it out to try to push Twisted Minds away. But they're still holding on to it at the moment. They want to save it for when Morph does get dived upon by the Echo, knowing that Diva has been such a huge target. Yubi, however, has been another target. The Tracer goes down. Naga coming in with the absolute clutch pick so that the backline is just a little bit safer. And it's bought themselves the time to be able to try and equalize the ultimate charges and retain control of Bridge. More importantly for Twisted Minds, it's not a full reset. They still don't have to go all the way around Bridge. They can still use these angles to pressure Peps and not allow themselves to win that poke phase and potentially lose the play before the fight even begins.
Peps playing some expert positioning now. Valkyrie used it again. Yubi, the pulse bombs, or the bombs rather, from Naga to get onto Yubi. He is resurrected immediately. Kitsune Rush here to keep the front line safe, but KSA loses mech, has to use that Diva Bomb. Does get the cleanse, but doesn't lose his life. He gets the mech back on the opposite side. Ultimate's committed, but Team Peps, they're sitting on a large ult bank right now. They still have that Diva Bomb. Opt not to use it until Morph decides to loses his mech on the front line. Looking for that bomb, aggressive now towards the inside, and it actually gets Slay. No way! Before that cleanse could save his life, he was not around the corner. It was a little bit too early. Peps now in the driver's seat.
Oh, they're not recommitting though. They're not over-regressing. They are allowing Twisted Minds just to lose that Kiriko and back on out. They know that Natal wasn't in a great spot to be able to res. Speaking about great spots, Yubi once again has to use the recall super early, and it allows Naga the control of this angle to be able to set in motion a duplication or even pressure on the Mercy. The stickies connect, but they're able to GA out of it in time.
The Telos movement perfect there. The Zerion does trade back Slay though, so that's a great opening pick, even though LBD did trade back for that support. Naga has to get out of there to play his life. 56 seconds left. Nobody pushing the car either, but Yubi gets Hybrid on the downside. Naga in the copy form has to use the Diva Bomb and just back on out of there. Yubi will take the consolation prize. That is that kill. But Moxie, we're entering last fight territory, and Twisted Minds have built up some ultimates.
There are a lot of glowing circles available for Twisted Minds, and they're going to start things up immediately with a Kitsune Rush trying to collapse onto Zerion. They force the Kiriko to reposition. Calyx goes extremely low, and Yubi finally is able to infiltrate the backline and find the kill that he's looking for, even getting the stick to connect onto Zerion as well. This is Twisted Minds able to finally pick up point B. It ate massively into that time bank, but they have an opportunity to be able to keep this momentum going. The problem is, Dustin, that they had to commit so much to guarantee that they took that fight. Kitsune Rush and Pulse Bomb committed. They're not going to have it to try and disengage from when Zerion has a Kitsune Rush of their own. When you have a minute and 35 seconds left, you don't want to go for the full disengagement because Team Peps are just going to push.
Yep, here they come. 1 minute and 30 seconds left. Twisted Minds, so they opt to just play around this cart. It looks like they do so. Multi touches with 0.62 meters. LBBD finds the opening pick before the Kitsune Rush or Valkyrie could be committed. The Resurrect now has to come out. He makes this fight even, but they're down that cooldown now. Twisted Minds opt to back out of there. They've done this before. They'll do it again. KSA has to use Diva Bomb, though, because he loses his mech. And on the opposite side, now they're going to come in. This is usually when Twisted Minds opt to rubber band back in towards this fight, but Hybrid with this Pulse Bomb can go absolutely huge if Suzu is committed already from Slay early. Now opts to use it, but it doesn't connect on anybody. And in fact, Molt loses mech and dies to a UV Pulse Bomb, but he loses the Diva Bomb, gets KSA. He's no longer in the fight. LBBD kind of playing like the pseudo tank. Can't really do too much until Nutella gets the Resurrect. He does use that Diva Bomb though. Naga low, cart space is secured. LBBD gets Naga. Slay finds Molf, and Twisted Minds with some time on the clock. Look like they're going to shut out Peps on this map, taking us to the next one. 2-1 over Team Peps so far.
Oh, the series, it's so close. It's so close, but Twisted Minds are able to see themselves through Rialto, and once again, it really does just come down to that ultimate management and the disengagement coming through from them. Being able to bait things like that Kitsune Rush, worse, unfortunately, for Peps, like the timing that is there on that Kitsune Rush that comes on through, like you're waiting for it, you're waiting for all of the teams to be there on the payload so you can connect onto them as quickly as possible and punish the fact that they're not running the Lucio, so the disengagement shouldn't be that easy to pull off. You should lose one player like halfway through. The problem, however, is that Twisted Minds find that early first pick. So even though Kitsune Rush comes through from Peps, they don't have all of their members intact. They're still having to look for that resurrection. So no one can really chase after Twisted Minds, and they get that window to be able to back on out from the rush, disengage cleanly. Even though KSA does lose his mech, he does have the self-destruct to immediately get it back. So again, Peps don't actually force Twisted Minds into taking that big step backwards that they're looking for. Instead, it's a little bit of a hop. And because of it, they can't chase after and try and turn that disengagement into stagger picks and better shore up their positions, their ultimates, and where they can stand on that defensive term. And Twisted Minds, they rubber band, like you said, and they time it absolutely perfectly.
For Naga, that almost felt like the game where, you remember EQO on the Genji on this map, like despite the loss, it was one of the best Genji plays of all time. Kind of similar like with that, with Naga. And in the meanwhile, you know who's like a hidden MVP, kind of a hidden gem in this series so far is you probably agree with me, Monks, he's Nutella. Nutella's doing a great job playing life, just getting out of those situations that are incredibly sticky, right? Just consistently running away from this Tracer and living all the time, whereas on the opposite side for Kelix, it's been more of a struggle.
Yeah, so again, like when we talk to Reinhardt players, like a lot of the time you'll hear like, oh yeah, I have so many years of experience of Reinhardt, so it makes sense that you can already play into this meta. The same can be said for our two Mercies, Nutella and Ange. Like they are so used to being able to play this pharmacy even before like Mercy was a very big thing, even before we know the Mercy changes come through, even before like we had Mercy's pocketing Sojourns to be able to play off the amount of damage that the Sojourn was able to do. These players were literally playing Mercy when pharmacies first started to become a thing, so they have that experience, that practice at being able to stay alive when the focus gets turned onto them. So you can see that they have that knowledge of how to dodge out of the Tracer, how to dodge away from the Echo, even to the point that we were seeing things like that duplicate form being committed to make sure that the kill on Nutella actually stuck. First they would try and just go in with the Echo, but then Nutella would be able to just sideswipe like he was in the Matrix, and it forced the duplicate to come on through, resources that then ate into the fight against the front line and trying to counter the duplicate on the other side.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned that a lot of it comes down to experience. It's all about, for them, it's like comparing it to DPS players, it'd be very similar to how a lot of DPS players are trying to increase their elims, right? Increase their damage over time and decrease the deaths. For a lot of support players, and specifically for Mercy players, it's just extending that time alive, like you mentioned. And now, on the next map on Coliseum, I would not be surprised to see very similar compositions, except for Pep side, who are subbing in, Moxie. On Coliseum, it looks like they're subbing in Krondop for the side of Team Peps, which means they're going to keep that Reinhardt in more than likely rather than not.
Yeah, I would expect that we see that Rein to come through, that May to come through. I'm a little bit concerned because this is when we saw these teams be the most unmatched when they met up yesterday, because that Reinhardt was really struggling to deal with LBBD. But it does look like we're actually going to see another adaptation come through from Twisted Minds, and that they might be putting Quartz back into play. And like we mentioned, like, Quartz has been one of these standout players, one of those hitscans that you really do have to watch out for, because you don't know what he's going to run out on. And something that we were talking about with Peps in the interview in the last series was that sometimes they did struggle to call what their opponent would be running, and as a result they had to lose that first fight and immediately rethink their composition. Something that can be turned around on a control point, but is a little bit harder to be able to disentangle on push, which just really plays off of momentum, such a large part of this map type.
Yep, and momentum is going to be a large thing forward, yeah, like you said, for Colosseo. And it feels like teams on Colosseo, Moxie, have just been continually going, 100 meters, and the comeback potential feels so difficult every time unless you get it really very far. Right, in the last series for Team Peps in that lower bracket finals, it felt like on that push map they lost. They had to, EXO really had to get it incredibly far, 100 meters, whereas I think they got like 30 with the first push. So it's like that first over 40 meters mark is when you realize, okay, this team is in the driver's seat. They are more than likely going to win this push map.
Well, speaking about winning, we do, however, have to address the fact that this is not match point. This is a first to 4 series, not a first to 3. So even if Peps do go down this map, they still have a chance to be able to pull it back. However, if Twisted Minds do take this map, they are going to put themselves onto match point. So still a lot of pressure. And I think for Twisted Minds, like, we do have to see whether or not they can adapt around what Peps have been running. But likewise, we have to see whether or not Peps can retain that cool. Like, we've seen that this team is very good at, even when the going gets tough, they can just take that moment, calm it all down, talk through the comms about what they're going to do. And they really found a lot of value from that. They don't panic, they don't overcommit ultimates. They really do just have good, clean, clinical Overwatch.
Yes, good, clean Overwatch. That's what we're here for, baby. Krondop on towards that statue side. We've seen, teams of old like to fight over here. They don't want to play around that robot. Wait, they're going so far, Moxie. Look at this. They're going all the way around the map. Twisted Minds are aware of that. They're like, okay, man, we'll just walk over here, I guess, then. But Krondop now rotates with this team towards the They just switch sides. They literally just switch sides. Now the robot is unlocking. Unfortunately, that Ashe could not find value with the dynamite. The robot is actually taken by them, so for now, it's not a bad position, and especially since they played against this Junker Queen before, both lamps are used from Zerion and Slay. Kind of a neutral game happening right now.
So because they did take that flank angle and the robot is technically under their control, that does mean that Twisted Minds had to be baited into Team Peps' front line, and as a result, Naga's wall was a little bit better than Yubi's, and as a result, Team Peps are still walking away with the bot.
And both supports are down, though. Both Baptiste. The charge does come through on a KSA, though, and it lands perfectly. But Krondop, he can't get the kill because Nutella is there with the peel yet again. However, Hybrid on this Cassidy does find out Lucio, hits the head of KSA, then double doinks on to Yubi. That's 3 for them. And like you mentioned, they're controlling that robot, and it is pushing that pillar.
Yeah, Naga with the wall manages to make it even easier for Hybrid to land up those shots. No one from Twisted Minds can disengage to get back to that health pack, and even the Immortality Field attempt from Slay is a little bit too late. Team Peps once again will control this robot at the moment, as they don't opt for the engagement just now. We're seeing the Ashe swap there from Quartz to come through. Dynamite is able to land onto the Cassidy from Hybrid. But Krondop knows that he gets free pin charges the second that Twisted Minds walk into him. There's no real way of countering him because KSA is not on the Doom, so they can't even use the punch to counter the Rein's movement.
And like we mentioned earlier, I mean, it's 30 meters is not exactly a dominant position to be in for Team Peps, so they're going to have to win this fight to really make a mark on Twisted Minds, to put them in a bit of a deficit here in terms of the meters. But here comes that Mei ultimate. Bob lands into that Mei wall, and he's frozen immediately, so he's not actually getting a lot of value in this fight. Meanwhile, Krondop with the beat can just swing to his heart desire. Hybrid gets Nutella, Yubi falls as well, and there we go. That's the fight that Peps needed to win to get this robot pushing towards that 40-50 meter mark.
Ooh, there's a big save relief from Peps' side as Krondop went extraordinarily low against that bob, but Kelix is actually able to land the sign barrier. Yubi's Maywall breaks to allow the Reinhardt that line of sight for the Lucio ultimate to commit. As speaking about line of sight, Hybrid's hoping that he has one. Deadeye comes through! Yubi's wall lasted for a split second before being focused on by the rest of the team, and the hit sticks.
I don't think I've ever seen High Noon be such an impactful ultimate in any series of Overwatch ever, Moxie.
I mean, he's looking for another impactful kill too. Hybrid's looking for the flank angle. He's managed to land the Magnate onto Quartz. Doesn't bait out the immortality field, but it still doesn't allow Twisted Minds any real breathing room to set and play this Blizzard. It does come through, it does connect, but the lamp is there from Zerion, and even though the Blizzard hits, no follow-up kill from Twisted Minds. Worse, the Shatter gets to be set up for Crandup, and they manage to connect onto KSA.
Oh no, I mean, this comp is being absolutely countered so hard right now for Twisted Mind's side, and they can't do anything. Naga's gonna have yet again another May ultimate, which was incredibly impactful last time in the May wall to stop KSA's Rampage from doing a lot.
Yeah, Slay doesn't even have an amplification matrix. Natella's not going to have a sound barrier. And that's the one thing that Twisted Minds have to worry about. KSA's Rampages have always been good, have always been impactful, but only when sound barrier hasn't been there to allow Peps that health to be able to sustain through. And Twisted Minds don't even get the opportunity to set in motion any attack at the moment. Amp comes out from Zerion, delaying the push as Crondup just hits those fire strikes and forces Twisted Minds to wait as the robot gains even more ground. No!
There it is. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Nice May wall from Naga on the opposite side, immediately into a freeze. I mean, that is just textbook May gameplay right there from Naga. That's exactly what you want them to do. And now this robot just pushing forward 100 meters mark. Twisted Minds, half the time on the clock is nearly gone, and you have 0 meters.
Yep, Hybrid is so close to Deadeye, Calyx is so close to Sound Barrier, Twisted Minds are going to swap KSA onto the Ramatra. Slay's going to have an amplification matrix, so that should be a little bit of breathing room to force Team Peps into one of these corners and not just keep pushing the cart. Zone is good, it does connect onto the team, but it runs out before amplification matrix can connect. However, the pummel is there. It lands onto Calyx, the lamp not in time to save the Lucio. And finally, Twisted Minds are able to clean up and win a fight, and finally start to push back against the distance that Peps have been able to snowball their way with.
Yeah, 125 meters, Moxie. I think that animation just with the Baptiste window and then plus the pummel, that might be the most beautiful thing in Overwatch right now, animation-wise. But now, yeah.
The problem for them, however, is that Twisted Minds now have to take another fight against Team Peps, when Team Peps are going to have things like the Deadeye and the amplification matrix of their own, and Twisted Minds can't really disengage this. They have 4 minutes and 40 seconds. They need to be able to just keep pushing and find that momentum, that same momentum that Peps were able to pick up. Quartz does have a bob. They're going to send it right through, and the wall does not actually come through in time to block the bob out. So amplification matrix nullified as UV comes in with the pulse bomb, as the threat of Deadeye is immediately bypassed.
Perfect stick from him, and now the charge comes through onto KSA into a shatter before or after the beat drop landed from the Tele, so it's great timing from him to keep KSA in this. And meanwhile, UB onto this May forces Naga's ice block on the opposite side. KSA just pumping damage in to Krondop, who charges a Tracer. He is traded out, however, and KSA has that ultimate and the pummel, so he's just going to keep pressing forward in towards that Baptiste, in towards this backline. He may not even have to use his ultimate, but he opts to use it towards the other team, but he's zoned out by a May. Wants to keep it going, but it's zoned off. Now he's out of it incredibly fast. That ultimate's already gone. Now that Baptiste window happens, and it allows Quartz to find the headshot onto Hybrid with that amplified damage. And now Team Peps, they're backing up. They are getting headshot as well by Quartz. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, Quartz catching Zerion mid-exo boot jump through that amp window. He's going to have a bob in this next fight. Hybrid, by the way, still hasn't been able to find any space to be able to safely use this Deadeye. Hyper armor or not, Twisted Minds have been relentless in hunting this Cassidy down. KSA on that off angle, making it even harder for Peps to be able to push through. The May wall is good from them. It does manage to blanket out the majority of the bob, but UB comes in again with that pulse bomb, and Hybrid still hasn't used Deadeye to zone Twisted Minds out.
What an MVP of this map so far. 3 minutes left now. Twisted Minds, make me eat my words, already at 60 meters. They were at 0 at the 5-minute mark. So just in a few quick minutes, they've rotated this map back in their favor until Naga hits the headshot on Yubi. So while it's one pulse bomb from Yubi, it's immediately hit by an icicle. So now KSA on this flank all alone has to use the ultimate to try to sustain and play his life. And it looks like it's working out. They can't kill him. He's too dang tanky. Wins that immortality field. The robot is in a position where it can be taken in the opposite direction, but then Naga drops that May ultimate. Does KSA eventually fall? No, he does not. He's playing his life incredibly well. Hybrid does trade back 1-for-1 on the backside, forcing Slay to use that amplification matrix. Nobody is in line of sight, but Kondop, he's all alone now. He does have to get that beat drop from Calyx and the immortality field. He rotates the opposite side, but can he live from this insane Ramatra in your face? No, he could not. Yubi does eventually take down Krondop on the opposite side. You're down your tank player, but he is traded up by Naga yet again. In Zerion with that damage, but no, KSA is still here pummeling in the front line. However, he's eventually killed, and Peps managed to win that fight.
That fight could have gone massively different if Twisted Minds had been just a little bit further and had forward spawns. Every single time one of them falls, it is just out of the fight for 30 seconds and a good 50 seconds with how long it takes for you to walk out of your spawn and back in. Peps, on the other hand, if they lose a member, there's about 20 meters. Now, because Twisted Minds weren't able to win that fight, we're heading to 1 minute and 30 seconds left because of how long it went. And unfortunately for them, Team Peps are in the driving seat in terms of ultimates and distance. There's gonna be an annihilation coming up for KSA. UB will have that pulse bomb. They have been extraordinarily impactful in hitting out Zerion, but you can already see the bat coming through. They're gonna drop that Ant Matrix to try and burst through this Nemesis bomb.
No!
But the pulse bomb connects onto Grandop. The Immortality Field doesn't save the Ryan in time, and suddenly things shift in Twisted Mind's favor.
Yeah, and compared to yesterday, this Ramatra is doing a great job just being that frontline pressure that they so desperately need. KSA playing his life, using the cooldowns nearly perfectly, just knowing when he wants to go in, knowing when to back up, and it's allowing Twisted Minds that potential comeback, but they're still down here, Moxie, in terms of meters.
They've got Annihilation though, and they'll have a Bob. They still don't have the forward spawn, so Quartz is going to take a little bit of time to be able to make it back into this fight, something that Team Peps are surely going to be looking to try to punish. Round up waiting for the opportunity to drop down with that Shadow Hybrid taking an off angle for the Deadeye setup. His team knows the second that KSA uses that shield, he's going to be vulnerable for the ultimate, and there it is!
Oh my god, perfect Shatter Hybrid there with the 2 kills. Twisted Minds opting to go for that fast reset like they have done before. Team Peps is trying to take the robot in the opposite direction. They want it maybe by this archway and then take the high ground, but no. They want to keep it pushing forward. They want to secure this victory.
They want to fight it here and now. This is the ideal position for a Reinhardt. You can actually even see them backing off so they don't push the robot any further. So we are still going to have this fight in very enclosed spaces. They are making sure to just open up a little bit more in terms of positioning if the Annihilation does come through, but Hybrid starts things off with that Deadeye, zoning into the members of Twisted Minds, almost connects onto Yubi, but doesn't find the kill. The Tracer is still alive, but so too is the Cassidy. And as a result, Twisted Minds have to be so careful about how they step forward as the Blizzard comes through from Naga, the wall to cut the Ramatra off, but he's still able to find the May.
They do. Do they have the follow-up damage? They do, but unfortunately, the beat drop has to be committed from Kellogg's to win this fight. Krondop purpled by the other team. Can't play his life fully, but Team Peps managed to find the kills there. Drop that window towards the end to capitalize off of Twisted Minds, but Nutella and Yubi do get 1 and 2. Now it's just a Baptiste and a Cassidy versus Tracer, but Hybrid's there with the follow-through damage, and Peps equalized this series, taking us to that sweet, sweet map number 5.
Oh, it's so smart from Krondop in that last fight too. They realized the moment that Naga goes down to KSA on the Ramatra, okay, this Ram is probably going to survive the Blizzard if he gets healing from his supports. What does Krondop do? He puts himself directly into line of fire and covers the Ramatra with the Reinhardt shield, blocking any line of sight from his backline to keeping the tank up. And then the members of Peps chunk him down. It's perfect.
Yeah, that May ultimate also set it up from Naga there, so great teamwork from the side of Team Peps. Now, Moxie, going into that map number 5, right, we are going in now to another control map. What do you think Twisted Minds opts to choose here after that first map on Oasis?
I mean, the answer's got to be the Fire, right? LBBD is probably going to be coming back, and this, by the way, was absolutely gorgeous. And I want to talk about this a little bit more because this is what Peps has in this fight against Twisted Minds, the understanding of the composition that they're coming up against and where Twisted Minds want to be able to use it. So if we sort of look at how that fight began, Team Peps had actually used the amplification matrix so that the robot made its way up onto slope and forced Twisted Minds into taking that fight on bridge. So the Junker Queen has to activate the Rampage at her end of bridge, which makes it all the more predictable to hear the voice line and gives you, as a Mei, the opportunity a couple more seconds to be able to react and use that Mei wall to be able to block the impact of the Rampage. Again, just really going to show how good Team Peps are at being able to react to ultimates that they know are going to be coming out in a matter of moments.
And they're so far the first team to take another map off of Twisted Minds. Twisted Minds never haven't dropped 2 maps in a row, or haven't dropped 2 maps in general in the entire Pro-Am. But guys, we'll be going to a short break. When we come back, we'll be back with that map number 5. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you on another control map. welcome back, guys, to the Pro Am West qualifiers. We are in the grand finals, and it's 2-2, guys. So you've just joined an incredibly exciting series between two evenly matched teams. When we thought that Peps, earlier in the tournament have had struggles against Twisted Minds, now we're in a situation where Twisted Minds, their backs against the wall. They have lost 2 maps, first time they've done all tournament. Peps taking it to them right now, Moxie.
Yeah, and remember, it's the first of 4. So with both of these teams currently sitting 2-2, we're guaranteed another 2 maps of Overwatch, at least, Dustin. But now it really is up to Twisted Minds to be able to adapt. We've seen that this Ashe composition isn't working out the best for them, so Team Peps can sort of checklist and tick that one off of being able to counter and adapt around. This is the true test. Looking at the heroes, looking at the players that Twisted Minds are running this composition with, LBBD is going to be going into this lobby. No surprises. It's Control. It's going to be Ilias. Of course you want to run Pharah. It just is a no-brainer. And I think this is the true test for Peps. If they're able to beat this Pharah composition, there's going to be a lot of really uncomfortable players on Twisted Mind's side because they've really thought that Pharah comp has been unbeatable every single time they've run it out.
Yeah, but Naga, on the opposite side, I think that's been a difference maker. Yes, the entire team of Team Peps, but Naga's been doing a great job stepping up today, whereas maybe before he was a little bit rusty on that Echo. We know Naga as a fantastic projectile hero player, right? Plays that Genji, plays that Echo, plays them to such a high level, has added Tracer into that hero pool to increase those folds, really to add to his worth as a player, and truly swapping over to that Echo yet again, kind of a signature hero of his, and to take it to LBBD, who was a fantastic Echo, probably one of the best, if not the best, that we have over here in Europe, to take it to him to win on those last maps, to also have the ability to swap over to that Mei when it's required. I mean, I think that he's kind of been an MVP for this team so far, Moxie.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, you can see that he has been a really big MVP. The walls to come through to make sure that Molf as well was able to survive a lot longer. Krondop being on that Reinhardt, being able to play around with that Mei as well. The blizzards that were being set into place too allowed a lot of zoning potential, especially when we saw KSI swap onto that Ramatra. Ramatra has a lot of impact before fights begin, poking you down, knowing that, you don't have damage fall off on your primary, so you can put even more pressure onto that Reinhardt and box Peps in, pushing them out of a lot of spaces that they want to be able to provide and occupy. Yeah. However, moving into this next map, the Mei is probably not going to have as much impact, especially when we move into places like, Lighthouse and Ruins. I would still expect to see it being played, simply because, again, there are a lot of places that you can use that wall, isolate those players out, secure a pick, and then very quickly move on to a team that's lacking one of those numbers. Well is a little bit harder to pull it off, simply because of how wide the map can be and the fact that a lot of people really do like to play the angles. So I'm more expecting to see something like a Tracer from Hybrid and potentially Naga even coming out on an Echo. Something that we've seen Peps do against Twisted Minds on the very first control point that they faced up against all the way in the beginning of this series, which feels like so long ago to probably us and to Peps as well. Because remember, they've already played a match today.
Yep. They have already played a match today, but maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that they've gotten that warm-up that they needed before this series to make sure that because they were pushed into uncomfortable situations in that ex-Oblivion game. So maybe adding to that, experience, having a very, very close game, have given them that edge. Although, we would probably be normal people. We would probably be exhausted after a game like that for sure. But, Peps, maybe they're built diffy. They're ready for this matchup, in which the next map we're going to is Lijiang Tower. So, I mean, apparently this is going to be a good map, I would say, for both teams. They have the strengths on certain maps. On Nightmerk, I think that's a bit more of a toss-up. But on the other two, I would say that both probably have their own advantage, Moxie. And, for this matchup specifically, some subs are happening too. Yet again, for Team Peps' side, we're going to see Molf come in, and on Twisted Mind's side, we're going to see LBBD be subbed in. And for this next map, and we saw it previously on Rialto, that Peps can play well, but I mean, obviously Twisted Minds, they came out again on that map.
Yeah, so Krondop going out of the mix for Peps does show that they probably want to step away from that Reinhardt rush, even on maps like Control Center, which is heralded for being one of the best Rein maps. Saying that, we're seeing Molf disappear from the lineup list, so maybe we're going to see Krondop come back through. Remember, it was touted as being Ilios when we saw all of the subs come through, so maybe now that Team Peps see that it's Lijiang, they do want to return Krondop into the mix, given that he can flex onto the Hammond and the Winston, but that he also brings that Reinhardt to the table for Control Center. Something, in my opinion, you really don't want to forego.
I mean, it's tough though, right? For Mulf. I mean, sadly, he's come in and has lost both maps that he's played. So, you know, for Krondop, I mean, they're probably just sticking with their guns, even if, well, actually, maybe we'll see what happens with Mulf, obviously. He can come in on Lejong. They could play incredibly well, but I mean, he is in an 0-2 deficit individually. And previously, I feel like I could speak on this because being subbed in and out, it's good for specific matchups still. Like, I think at the end of the day, if both players can do that, that's what you want. But you know, when you're doing it so consistently, if your player's down 0-2, we have to worry about, or not worry, but you have to think about his mentality now. Do you think that Mulf is feeling maybe a bit of the pressure now down being 0-2 individually?
I think it could definitely like lead to a break in momentum, and you really don't want that for your tank player, especially because like it's going to be down to Mulf again to create that space. We already talked about it when we saw it most blatantly on Oasis University. Twisted Minds rely on their DPS to be like the stars, and KSA is that supporting role. But when it comes to Peps, they rely on the tank to make that first move and create that safety cushion for the DPS to properly be able to play off of. Heading towards Control Center, however, is definitely a good thing for Team Peps, because this is the map where LBBD is most likely going to struggle if they do indeed intend to run out that Pharah or the Echo. Again, simply because a lot of these fights take place in rooms that are very small and with a ceiling. So Hybrid and Naga are going to have a lot more value and impact.
And I like to see LBD kind of flex his hero ball over to the cast. But guys, this is map number 5. Get hype. It's not over just yet. Both teams evenly matched here. Mulf coming in on that D.Va now, opts to take towards that white room and are immediately walled off by Yubi, who was on the Mei, and off that Tracer, Marcy.
Yeah, Mulf on that D.Va, not on that Sigma, so you are going to be able to potentially defense matrix things like that Jagged Blade throw coming out from KSA. You are going to be a little bit more open to things like that Carnage, but Team Peps decide, okay, they're going to back out. They see that KSA is on that Junker Queen, that LBBD is not running a Pharah, so they're swapping Mulf onto the Reinhardt, knowing that there isn't really a lot of vertical push that can try and push back against this one composition, and as a result, play goes down super early. Mulf with the aggressive play, gets to find that first pick, gets the immortality field so he survives the consequences of it, and now gets to swing against the Junker Queen, but unfortunately, he does go down in the process.
Well, not everybody's committed towards this fight in this room over here except Naga. So unfortunately, he was left behind, but LBBD is traded back onto the back line. It's just KSA towards the point, who was trying to win by his lonesome. Now has a Lucia with him. Immortality field actually committed from Slay towards this fight, but guess who's back again? It's Mulf. And they don't have this point yet, by the way. It was recontested by KSA last second, so they could never get that that switch. And KSA still has all those heals, but he doesn't have the immortality field, so he's just crushed immediately by the hammer of Mulf 1G. I mean, who needs your boy Krondop on Reinhardt when you got Mulf who can just make that swap over and do just as well?
Yeah, however, Twisted Minds, like you said, were able to retain control of that point. That's why Mulf did go down when he was trying to push into KSA. Members of Peps were occupied trying to oust Twisted Minds off of that point to finally find the flip. As a result, the Rhine wasn't able to be supported, went down, and Team Peps still weren't able to find it until just now and can look to stall out this next fight. They have a Deadeye to be able to set up. KSA is still running the Junker Queen, so the Rampage is going to be something they have to watch out for, but so too is that zoning Blizzard. Twisted Minds all have to fall away from that mail and potentially put themselves into Hybrid's line of sight.
The Rampage is big, but it's countered by a beat drop, and Mulfig on the front line tried to go for a shatter, and it actually works out. He lost his life, but they traded back KSA and UV, so this continual relentless pressure onto the side of Twisted Minds is so rough for LBD and the boys, so they're going to get KSA to swap over to Ramatra and UV on Tracer. Yeah,
Mulf Shatter as well buys the time for Naga to be able to come back and cool down with that Mei wall, so Twisted Minds still haven't left this choke, and they're still going to eat so much damage from this round when he starts to walk onto them. Siren Barrier from the Teller to allow LBBD to hold their Deadeye for as long as possible. Does connect onto the Mei, doesn't manage to find the pick. Zera's got an Ant Matrix of his own, and now it's going to be even harder for Twisted Minds to try and push onto this point. The good news for them is that they went fully through the choke, so they are able to disengage it pretty cleanly.
Now through that white room, Twisted Minds re-engage, but how well can they do versus Mulf, who just decides to stomp the rest of Twisted Minds at this choke? Forces that lamp on both sides. Charge comes through, unfortunately misses it, but his Fire Strike does not. It strikes iron. Mulf kills KSA, 80% on the board now. Twisted Minds have nothing.
And it's going to be a Blizzard online for Team Peps soon in this next fight as well. We're seeing the swap come through. Twisted Minds acknowledging that the Pharah is the composition that Team Peps have been worried about the most. That's why we've seen a lack of the Reinhardt rush. They're running for this Tracer, so UB should be able to get this touch even as we head into final fight territory. As LBBD has to go cliff side so that he has more room to be able to work with. Overtime connects and KSA finds the first pick.
Nice job running on the hybrid. I mean, we saw this before with this Diva composition, just to run on the Cassidys on the opposite side. We just don't usually see it on control like you, or on this map in particular like we've seen before. And that's 3 tank swaps that we've seen from KSA. Junker Queen to Ramatra, now to Diva. And 50% on the board for Twisted Minds. They have some ults here, but Team Peps, I mean, Molf is imagine. Wait, he's going to swap to Diva.
Yeah, they have to. They were using the Reinhardt because there was no Pharah on the other side, but now they need the Diva to come through, especially because that barrage is going to be available for LBBD if you don't have the defense matrix to eat up all of the spam damage as Team Peps walk out from this choke. They have the Blizzard, but Twisted Minds aren't playing close enough for it to be used preemptively. Instead, they're going to have to try and throw it onto the point to bait Twisted Minds into stopping a flip to come through.
KSA just waiting over here. Yubi with the pulse bomb towards the white room. He wants to go, but he's waiting for the callouts from his team to notice when that defensive matrix is used and that Diva's engaged. Now he knows. Here comes Naga, though, hunting that Tracer, making sure he does not feel comfortable even in the slightest towards the main. That is his job, to keep out Yubi from this fight, but they flip the point. Overtime now takes down. Point recontest has to happen, and what better ult to do it with than a Katsuni Rush and a Pulse Bomb. It lands, but Zerion immediately drops that lamp, but gets taken out by KSA, who decided to go aggressive, and now with that Katsuni Rush on the point, they're getting a lot of value, but Hybrid takes that LBD, gets rid of Slay. Nutella is frozen from Naga, who comes from the top rope to close out, and now Twisted Minds come through with that delay. They do have a Diva Bomb. KSA could delay for a bit longer, but here that Diva Bomb lands, and now Yubi's back in towards this fight. Naga decided to get out of He got out of the main freeze to be slam dunked by KSA. Michael Jordan. Yubi lands on the Kelix as well, and that might just be the turn, the tide that turns the tables of this match. That Diva Bomb lands towards that main, but doesn't hit on anybody. Now LBD with that barrage. Everything was flipped on its head as soon as the crushing mommy that is that Diva of KSA lands onto your face, and now nobody from Team Peps can touch. Twisted Minds will take this round.
Oh no. KSA with that remake, like you said, finds the pick onto the Mei, but also gets back in the mech and stalls long enough for LBBD. We're gonna get to see it in replay. I'm gonna have to look away. LBBD gets to come back in with that barrage, and you can actually see Morph has to throw in the self-destruct to just try and zone Twisted Minds away from collapsing in on him. And he isn't even able to get back into the mech and activate defense matrix in time. The second that LBBD sees that the self-destruct has gone off, he moves in with the barrage and catches the Diva right before defense matrix is even an option. As there it is, the remake kill and the immediate barrage once Morph is out.
Is it, are we allowed to call KSA a Dommy Mommy? You know, after that one, I think, I mean, some people would pay to get crushed by KSA like that, you know what I'm saying? But on the opposite side, Team Peps, we're running that Sombra now. They're truly trying to counter this comp now by Twisted Minds. Yeah,
that may actually be the remake kill that earns Twisted Minds $5,000, as now we are going to see them finally getting the wings unclipped. This is the map that they wanted to head to. This is the map that Team Peps were most likely going to be concerned about. The hack does come through onto the Pharah, but there's no follow-up damage. Naga and Hybrid aren't able to find the pick, and as a result, this Pharah is still reigning supreme! Oh, the movement is so clean!
I mean, like, watching this guy play Pharah is just like watching some of those old professional esport players in like the 90s and 2000s, just with perfect projectile movement. They even sleep move to delay him. They don't want him to jump off the map, and there he goes. Finally gets more charge to KSA.
Yeah, Peps, like, the fact that Control Center came out first was an absolute trump card, but they lost it. So now they're going up against a team that thrives on the Pharah composition on two of Pharah's best maps in the entire game. LBBD is just playing on that rooftop, getting to slide to be able to save that cooldown of fuel, but also keeping himself entirely out of sight. His health bar has not taken a single dent until he reveals his position. Even now, it's only one digit that he loses. It's very quickly pocketed back up by Nutella.
Nutella doing a great job keeping LBD in this fight on the front line. Molf, though, gets that boop off the map onto Slay, who has been a menace pocketing his team in that back line. So no more do they have that Anna, but Yubi trying to find something to equalize. Unfortunately, caught out a little bit overextended, will lose his life to Hybrid, and LBD still has that barrage. I don't think he's going to want to commit to use it until next fight on the re-engage. The recontest by Peps, it's successful.
Yeah, the improperly fought Twisted Minds, however, like holding on to that barrage, they do have an ultimate for this next fight, but they also have to get LBBD in position to be able to use it. And that's a lot easier said than done, especially because Naga's going to be there with the Sombra to try and hack him out of it, but more importantly, Molf is going to be there with the D.Va. We've already seen LBBD have the pixel perfect timing to catch the D.Va out as you use self-destruct and get back into mech. But what else has got perfect timing is Hybrid getting that melee kill onto Yubi and immediately covering up the distance. So Natal just doesn't have the confidence to be able to go for the res. If he goes for the res onto his Tracer, LBBD is left alone.
Yeah, Naga, I think, set that up with the hack again. Another hack onto LBD to increase that damage output onto him. Towards the top side, here comes that barrage. Nobody is still ready to go, but they gotta wait for Yubi to come back towards this fight. And Peps, they've built up every single ultimate on their side. They're in a great position. It's on them to mess it up, and they do so! No! Sirion, he got canceled in that Kitsune rush. Naga gets slayed, though, on the opposite side, but that's one ultimate down. Now LBD gets Molt as he was attempting to use that deep bomb. The beat drop connects onto just what? Naga? Now that EMP comes out, no follow-up damage, so he's eventually taken out by Twisted Minds, to successfully reclaim this point.
Yeah, Team Peps throwing ultimates in, just trying to stall that point for as long as possible, but also try and bait Twisted Minds into returning ultimates of their own. Twisted Minds, however, a lot calmer-headed. They hold on to their ultimates, they don't play into Team Peps' bait, and as a result, they've still got the barrage, they've still got the self-destructs, and worse, Slay has a nano boost to make sure that the forest survives the entirety of the ultimate. As LBBD is just waiting, sees the D.Va boost away, gets the nano boost, the mech is gone from KSA, so no defense matrix. However, unfortunately, Wolf isn't able to react, and the defense matrix is not there to stop LBBD from just tearing through the team.
Oh, it's gonna be over here in just a second. Now 7% away. Team Peps, they have to switch to stall. They have a Tracer to touch, but unless something crazy happens, this might just be over for Team Peps on this map specifically, but they are gaining some traction here. They'll have every single member of their team. If they can regroup towards this point and not lose Naga here, it might be good for them. Yubi did drop a Pulse Bomb and miss it, so no more Pulse Bomb in this fight. Hybrid will have his own, but where does he commit it to? Slay is dead. On the offside, LB does get Molt though, so no more main tank, no more Kellis in this fight. Pulse Bomb still there, lands, but it only connects on the Nutella, where LBD already got his value before his Mercy died. And no more people on this point means Twisted Minds will capture this map. And I mean, Moxie, where's the boss music? Can you give me your boss music for LBD? He's just on fire right now on that Pharaoh. Whenever LBD is nano boosted, I feel like I just get some, like, I don't know, Calamity Terraria boss music playing in my head.
A throne worth $5,000 for absolute sure. I mean, it was always going to be a tough road for Peps to try and deal with, right? Control is one of those map types where Farah is at her strongest, and Lijiang is one of those maps where, even in metas where we were seeing Farah not really being that favorable, teams would still opt into that Farah duel. And when Peps got handed the gift that was Control Center first, but then didn't manage to pick it up, it just became so much harder. Because like we said, even if they navigate through Night Market, and Night Market was close, they were able to keep a much better tap on LBBD than I think Twisted Minds were expecting. Waiting in the wings is Garden. And if Night Market is one as far as best map, Garden is far as best map by far.
Yeah, it's a hard... I thought that Night Market potentially was going to maybe be up in the air, but yeah, I mean, for just Twisted Minds to just shut out Team Peps, they looked good at the beginning, but just could never, you know, reclaim that point after that second flip. And, you know, a lot of great plays from Naga on the Sombra, and the compositional changes weren't terrible. But like you mentioned, I mean, Twisted Minds and this Pharaoh were just too dominant.
Yeah, the problem as well for Team Peps, when they were running the Sombra and the Tracer, like, you're looking for picks. You're looking to try and isolate members of Twisted Minds out, so you can either land on that Ana with the Sombra, or you manage to get the hack onto the Pharah, so you can actually kill them. But if you're targeting the Pharah down, the Mercy's just going to keep healing the Pharah. And we saw what happened when Killix went after Slay. The Sleep Dart hits the Lucio, the Antinate follows up, and Slay just remains absolutely untouchable. So even though the Tracer and Sombra were there, they weren't really finding that one-clip value that Team Peps needed to be able to create a space so that the Pharah had something else to look at, rather than just catching the supports out as they move from choke to point, punishing the fact that there's no shield for them to hide behind. Once that D.Va mech from Molf is gone and the defense matrix all burnt out, they are just sitting ducks against that Pharah composition.
It feels like, Moxie, every time KSA swaps to that Diva, it's just Twisted Minds are back in control, right? I mean, it just consistently, they play that to Ramacha, they play Junker Queen, but until KSA makes that swap to Diva, which I guess he does need that Pharah for, it just seems inevitable that they are going to take a couple L's until the last second. But now, Moxie, we will be going to Escort, and we've seen already Rialto. What do you think Team Peps opts to choose against a team like Twisted Minds, who maybe even might sub in Quartz?
I mean, I could see Junkertown coming through from this team, right? If they're worried about that Pharah composition, if they're worried about maybe an Echo coming through, Junkertown does have some really good line of sights, especially for Hybrid. Like, we've seen that he does try and roll out in something like the Widowmaker, but that does get punished by things like a Hammond pick. Honestly, I would just like to see the commitment to the Cassidy from spawn to finish off map, because I think Cassidy is your best bet at shutting both KSA down, but also LBD, because he's staying in the lineup, and I'm very, very concerned about what that Pharah is cooking up.
And that's the rough part for Team Peps, right? Is that obviously I think that so far Hybrid has proven his best hero to be the Hanzo, right? Or even that Bastion at times, but both of those don't really work against a player like LBD. And also on the opposite side, if you're going against a player like Quartz, who potentially could always be subbed in for Twisted Minds, I mean, that's equally talented hit scan player that you're going to have to take those duels with and probably won't win. I mean, maybe at best you'll win 50% of the time. So, you know, because of that for Team Peps, there's so many factors that they have to worry about for Twisted Minds. There's so many things they have to change up and potentially do, right? Like even choosing if they want to sub in Krondop or Molf.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you do go for Krondop, we know it's probably going to be the Reinhardt. If Molf sticks around, it's probably going to be that Sigma or the Diva. Maybe we get to see the Sigma come through. They have been trying to make the Diva work because, you know, you have things like the boosters. You can try and push on to the backline of Twisted Minds, and we have been seeing him attempt it. A lot of the time he's been going for the boosters to connect onto LVBD, and then when he saw that wasn't working, we did see a little bit of a swap around, and he would try and go after Slay or Yubi to a certain extent and just like act as sort of a guard dog for his backline, seeing that the Tracer was getting a lot of value early on in the series. I would say that Yubi is being kept in check a lot more by Peps now, but the problem is that when one door closes for this Tracer, the other door opens for this Pharah. Because you're putting so much resources into dealing with the Tracer, the Pharah gets so much more free reign. That is the entire idea of this Tracer and the Pharah synergy. Like, that crossfire that comes on through, one is always meant to give the other more room to breathe.
And now Twisted Minds making a sub, putting in Quartz. By the way, we will be going to Havana, so that makes a lot of sense, correct? I mean, having your boy Quartz back in the lineup, what does that add to Twisted Minds' success here?
I mean, for Twisted Minds, it does mean that Quartz is going to try and go against Hybrid. Like, there's a reason that Team Peps are taking us to this map, because of that initial high ground. You have the option, especially with them swapping Krondop into the mix over Molf. I'm expecting that we're going to see that Rhine Rush with the Mei and the attempt at that early spawn hold. But if that falls apart, you do have the immediate high ground that's opposite the attacker spawn, which is just perfectly placed either for a Hanzo or a Cassidy. So Hybrid is really going to be at home trying to hold on to that ground for as long as possible. For Twisted Minds, their win condition is making sure that he doesn't get to stand there for the majority of their attack.
Yep, and obviously with Quartz potentially coming back in now, coming back in for that Widowmaker potentially, even on a map like Havana, which Peps are choosing, could end up being a significant upside for them. However, similarly to the other side, when Quartz has been coming in, he's been doing well, but it's been hard for him to deal with Team Peps, right? It's like the opposite thing of Molf. Right now, Krondop coming in, it's almost like Krondop's countering Quartz, but on the opposite side, LBD, is countering Molf. So on the opposite side, I mean, who do you think wins Havana here, right? We're going to that next map, which means Twisted Minds, if they win this one, it's all over. They'll get that $5,000 and get that 1 seed for that qualification.
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to be about the defense, isn't it? Havana always comes down to how good your defense is. How long can you eat into the attacker's time bank? Can you pull off a full hold? Or are you able to burn them down to point C? Like, you always want the full hold just because of how hard it can be to get this payload moving to begin with. So I think for both of these teams, there's a lot of pressure. Obviously, there's more pressure on Peps to be able to win the map, because this is match point for Twisted Minds. If Twisted Minds take this, they take that first place, they secure their position as the better team in EMEA when we head into contender season, and they also take home double the prize pot, $5,000 as opposed to $2,500. But I think for Peps, again, like, they just have to breathe, they have to reset, they still have a chance, and Havana is definitely one turning point that they can find if they're really able to set in place these DPS.
And when they've subbed Krondop in, it seems like they're always winning. So now he's going to be back in the lineup. And luckily for them, maybe the Reinhardt can work out here, although it is a bit more open. I'm surprised they haven't wanted to maybe change things up, maybe to lock back towards, at least for the side of Twisted Minds, maybe to stick with that Pharah composition, even on maps where it's not really known for. But on a map, oh yeah?
Pharah does work, especially to try and like break out of that point A.
Yeah.
The problem again is that if Hybrid at any point just decides on the defense to pull back and not hold aggressively by the spawn doors, the Pharah, even though you're trying to like hide over the rooftop, can still be spotted out. And it does mean that you don't have that pressure going through onto Hybrid, who can hold up on the high ground and put even more damage into all of your team as they walk out of spawn.
Mox, you ever eaten pigeon before?
I tell you what, here's a look behind the curtain. The prod side of things are obsessed with pigeon to the point of like when you see pigeons on the camera, guarantee you that the observer comms are going pigeon.
You scared me for a sec. I assumed you said they were obsessed with pigeons because they love eating them, and I was like, oh my god, okay. We got some pigeon eaters in the building, but these pigeons are living life. Are they even real pigeons?
I wouldn't try and eat these pigeons, Dustin. I'm pretty sure that like normal street pigeons probably diseased.
More than likely, yeah, I have heard of people touching their eye and then getting sick immediately. But you know who is also sick is, this is a very bad transition, but Krondop on Reinhardt now sticking to it again. They're actually getting up the space. Look, Twisted Minds playing back of the map. They have Mercy pocketing Sojourn.
Yeah, I mean, not just the Mercy pocketing the Sojourn, but also the ability to resurrect. So if one of your team gets picked out, especially because you're on the defense, so you do have a longer respawn route, you are going to be able to instantly put them back up. Team Peps, on the other hand, opting to run Hammond Dive. Kellick's going to be on the Mercy, Zarian on that Zenyatta, putting a lot of pressure down main and already pushing through KSA's Sigma Shield.
And that'll be crucial too now to do so, and UB going to keep pressuring out KSA around this corner. Here comes Krondop on that flank towards backside, and meanwhile Zerion setting up that flank in the bottom right as well. So they're just trying to take angles around Twisted Minds right now. Forcing them back off this high ground is the goal, and not getting your head ripped off by Quartz on that Sojourn.
Quartz will survive. UB, however, doesn't. They get traded out. Quartz is able to take Hybrid down. There's the Mercy, there's the Resurrection. UB is safely up on that high ground, but so too is Kellick's able to get Hybrid back into the fight. UB on that hand, so does take out Naga, but no pulse bomb going to be there for the side of Team Peps. However, Hybrid, we touted him as one of the best Sojourns in the region last year in Contenders. He's hitting the shots, he's building up that railgun, he's always pushing into Twisted Minds, and this poor Sigma, that shield is just allowing the Sojourn to put up railgun so much faster than the side of Quartz.
This is not a matchup that Team Peps are really, they feel totally fine playing it, right? They're good running against KSA onto the Sigma. They have Krondop on Wrecking Ball, in which Krondop has said, you know, sometimes taking a little bit too much damage on the Wrecking Ball. In this situation, it appears to be just that, but he did create some space. KSA swapped to D.Va, so they'll have that recontest with the D.Va, whereas Krondop's going to have to come back from spawn.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're seeing that D.Va swap come through. Twisted Minds know that they can immediately bite back into Team Peps when the tank isn't there. And as a result, Team Peps don't get to hold aggressively forward. Hybrid doesn't get the opportunity to open up with a shot of that old fire. But Krondop with that grain is actually able to find Yubi on the grapple. And although Twisted Minds tried to throw an amplification matrix to secure that position on side lane, Team Peps just walk right through it and secure the payload.
You know, like, the most sad part about this matchup so far, Moxie's Hybrid gets to tell is it feels like, you know, Krondop and KSA would be like perfect teammates because they almost like cover each other's hero pool, right?
See, this is what I was talking to you about. I was like saying, oh, I really do sometimes just miss the synergy of off-tank and main tank.
Yeah.
And Krondop and KSA would make an absolute monstrous team together, I do feel. However, they are against each other in this matchup, and Krondop does have a little bit of a lead in terms of ultimate charge, given that he ran out on the Hammond and stayed on the Hammond. KSA, on the other hand, did swap from the Sigma to the D.Va. So Hammond Mines are going to be available for Team Peps. What Twisted Minds have to deal with, though, is the overclock from Hybrid. They are so careful not to peek into the Sojourn.
They trade one for one, and Hybrid over the top without an overclock of his own. Just a charged up railgun shot. Shuts down that ultimate from Quartz. Could get that overclock, but no! Hybrid with just a railgun charge up by himself. Gets Nutella. Kellick's was traded out, but it might be too little too because Hybrid with the high ground is a menace.
Point on the map to the DPS that is done with this. Hybrid is absolutely on fire right now. He is not holding anything back. And like you said, he did that with just normal all fire and the railgun. So he's still going to have an overclock for when Twisted Minds have to put together a recontest. The payload, however, only now just going to start to move. Transcendence is going to be coming out from Zerion so they can secure that pick onto Slay and hold that position aggressively, forcing KSA and Nutella back, so the resurrection is not going to be there for the Kiriko.
Twisted Minds, they're getting a little bit staggered here. The cart isn't even pushing. Team Peps just want to get kills right now. They're not even worried about getting this cart forward. I feel like if they've had somebody on the cart for the entire time, it might have been capped by now, but that deep bomb came out. Yubi's back for the delay, but they need somebody else to come through, and that's KSA. Slay is finally back. He's been the target for the dives of Team Peps, but Zerion on the other side has been the target for Twisted Minds, and they capitalize, get him and Hybrid. But in the meantime, Kellis came back for the peel on Brigitte, but Slay takes him out. Even though he has a shield, just managed to hit him with the kunai. At the same time, Krondop towards his payload wants to find the kill, but he knows he can't really find it just yet. He's surely going to fall, and that's a reset for Team Peps.
Good shield use from Krondop. He tries to go over towards the health pack, but it's already been taken. However, Twisted Minds can't give up that position on payload, so they can't chase him down. If they do, Peps can look to back up with Naga on that Tracer. Hybrid is off of the Sojourn onto the Cassidy to try and chunk damage into that backline and push onto Nutella or anyone held up in the window. As Krondop does still sit on those hammer mines, can put them in whenever he wants to, but he's saving them. The Slays continue rush to drain away all of the momentum that Twisted Minds look to set up with a Kiriko.
Yeah, at the same time, Krondop harassing his backline, drops the mines in the window, but doesn't really have a lot of heals here as, again, Quartz picks off Zerion from across the map. I mean, with that time to come in, Pulse Bomb does not connect, and Quartz yet again, with the overclock follow-up shots, confined to Hybrid down as well. Just looking for this Brigitte, in which we haven't really seen besides anybody play besides Kelix. And now 1 minute and 12 seconds left on the clock.
So the Brig is definitely an interesting pick. Like, Brig obviously gets the most amount of healing done with Inspire, so you want to run it with a frontline heavy composition so that everyone is close to that Brig's AoE, and when you get those hits to land, everyone's getting healed. But Twisted Minds, again, very mobile composition, very hard to be able to pin down one of these players, and it does eat into that rally charge. Kelix will have it for this next fight. They can use it preemptively, but Twisted Minds are running with a lot more ultimates in the pocket.
Yeah, and I hate this map as a Zenyatta player versus a lot of these long-range characters. It's so hard to play it, but now that rally comes through towards that car, like you said, now KSA looks to zone it with that Kitsune rush, having Quartz high charge across that backline with a Valkyrie, keeps him nice and healthy. No ult here either now, not even a Transcendence to save Hybrid, so he's gone. Kelix is down, and Zerion, besides one Transcendence earlier, it's been tough for him on this map.
KSA is still holding onto that self-destruct as well. Team Peps aren't running Krondop on the Reinhardt, so they're not going to be able to shield that oncoming damage when we hit into overtime. We're seeing the swap from Kelix onto the Lucio just so they can try and throw themselves onto the point, because remember, there's less than 10 seconds left. Team Peps have to touch, otherwise this is where the cut stays.
Here comes that touch from Krondop. Naga just spawned now. Overtime now takes down Hybrid with the high noon. Does he have enough sustain? No, he doesn't. No lamp here this time to save him while he's high nooning, so no value is to be found. Overtime halfway. Has to be touched by Krondop now. Is triggered yet again. Krondop now goes to the backline. Perfect discord on Nutella. That was a nice job by Zerion, who then comes back in with a Transcendence. Krondop is nice and healthy. Naga gets the health back. Will have a Pulse Bomb as well, and Krondop gets Quartz. So yet again, last second, no way could they do it again. Eventually, Zerion chased down, but a Eaton Pulse Bomb comes out from KSA yet again. Now comes that cleanse in the mines, the zone on the point, but a Diva Bomb, can it zone even better? Yes, it can, until Krondop loses his life. And again, another slam yet again, this time onto Hybrid. Naga does get Yubi, however, the hack comes through. Naga just delays, but it's not enough. Twisted Mind stop him, although it was close towards the end.
Team Peps are going to be looking back at when they were winning that fight on point B and going after those struggle picks, not pushing the cart, and thinking of some serious regrets, Dustin. Because I hate to say it, but like you said, if they'd had members pushing that cart, they probably would have picked up point B, and they may well have been able to push that payload through into point C. The good news for them, however, is that they did push the payload through a majority of point B. So they will have the option to go for the spawn hold. They will have the option to put Hybrid up onto that high ground and make it even harder for Twisted Minds to walk out of point A safely. The problem is that, like, Twisted Minds running this composition, we don't know what they're going to run out with. Is KSA going to be on the Junker Queen, the Ramatra, the Diva? We have no way of knowing. And Team Peps on the defense, they have to call this right. Unlike when we've seen them on control point, they don't get that opportunity to look at the composition they're running up against and walk back into spawn to reset. They have to be able to predict what Twisted Minds are running, otherwise this is an instant fight loss, and the payload gets to move so much further for absolute free.
Yep. I mean, it's a good point. Now Team Peps fans are screaming probably at their team to maybe to just lock this Rhine composition, because this is where they found a majority of their success, right?
I mean, I think for me, like, Team Peps, they are running that Rhine composition. Hybrid is holding a little bit close to the rest of the team, so he can start to use things like the Magnate to pressure Twisted Minds. But again, it really does come down to how efficient Team Peps can use this comp to burn into the time bank of Twisted Minds, because Twisted Minds have the opportunity to go back and swap. They don't have LBBD, so they are going to be running hit scan for support. They don't have the power to be able to try and chunk away from it, and as a result, Team Peps do have an advantage in the front line.
Suzu used already, and there it is. No lamp either to last a bit of time. Twisted Minds already have to reset in their spawn doors, but they can make those adjustments that you talked about, Mox.
There's the adjustment one. Quartz going on to the Widowmaker, deciding if they can try and find an off angle. If Team Peps were holding a little bit too aggressively away, decides no, it's going to be the Cass rather than the Ashe, putting a lot more pressure with the Fan the Hammer on that Reinhardt shield from Krondop. The Slay moves on to the Ana. These are Team Peps aren't running a Kiriko, and knows if an anti-nade connects, it should mean a dead player. Kelix has already gone down.
And they trade it back, though. Zirion gets Slay. Hybrid finds KSA, but now it's just Krondop here versus a Cass and a Lucio. Can he find one? Yes, he can, but he's hit by the skillful grenade from Quartz. That's a 3K from him, and they get that cart pushing forward with only a minute off the clock.
Really good target focus to go onto Kelix as well, because it forces Team Peps into just holding that ground. Without that Lucio, they can't disengage. They just have to try and buy themselves as much stall as possible, so that extends into ultimate charge with Twisted Minds in this next fight. Even though Team Peps won the first fight single-handedly with that spawn hold, Twisted Minds have been able to eat a little bit more into the economy balance as Team Peps take that high ground, look for the drop down. Hybrid's still going to be on the op, so Twisted Minds are going to have to actually try and send Quartz into contesting that angle.
Well, Team Peps are great at playing these angles where they just want to keep getting fights. They'll get 3 fights here. Now use that window on the main side, but Yubi's actually the one to find a pick onto Kelix, even though it was on the opposite side. So now that Shatter has to be committed from Krondop. They do get Nutella, so that's a Lucio for a Lucio, and I'm sure Team Peps will be happy with it. Now the high noon comes out from that defensive side. It almost gets him through that high noon, but the damage reduction is enough to keep him alive. Yubi also takes out, or goes low in the front line. Meanwhile, KSA just pummels everybody in the lobby, looking like an MMA fighter right now, running down the rest of Team Peps, but now 2 minutes on the clock.
Twisted Mind's going to have Annihilation and Blizzard, two ultimates that you really don't want to be combined if you're on the side of Team Peps, especially because they don't have Sound Barrier. They can try and zone it out with a counter Blizzard of their own, but if Yubi's lands and everyone from Team Peps gets frozen, that Annihilation is going to rip through their health bars.
Yeah, well, here it comes. Now that nail lands from Yubi. Doesn't actually connect on anybody, just zones towards that backside. Now the Annihilation is surely going to be used for KSA. The high noon tries to find something for Hybrid. Nothing but space. This point is still being contested, but Slay finds Krondop. Zirion trades Yubi out, and look at KSA. He's controlling and locking down this cart like no other. He's just destroying the entire potential defense from Team Peps. Reset has to happen. 3 minutes and 40 now to capture out this map.
Yeah, Yubi baiting Naga into using that Blizzard to counter his means that KSA gets free run of that Annihilation, catching onto those members of Peps, and it may not come in with the kills, but it does still chunk them low enough for Slay to be able to finish them off on that Kiriko. And it is going to be 3 minutes and 24 seconds for Twisted Minds to be able to finish pushing this card. If they're able to take Havana, they take the entire series. Team Peps have to find a way of stopping it. They think it's still going to be this Reinhardt rush. Krondop does manage to charge on through and find a connection on supports in the backline, but now he's left alone, and the team has to actually commit super aggressively in trying to save him from the pummels that come through from KSA. They've given up that high ground.
You know, Twisted Mind is doing a good job just kind of like waiting it out. They only lose one member. Back on out of. They're not afraid to reset. I mean, they do have that cushy time bank. And, you know, Team Peps kind of back against the wall right now with the time against them on the clock. And the beat drop available for Twisted Minds. However, the ultimate advantage is in Team Peps' favor. Krondop went for that charge. Connects on to Slay yet again from the aggressive one. And another reset for Twisted Minds. But they're fine with it, right? Because they're at that ult disadvantage. So they want to build up, let Peps use ult first.
Krondop falls extremely low, trying to chase after Quartz on that Sojourn, who power slides away. Does manage to build up the last little bit of charge or Shatter, however, because of that chase. And Team Peps, like you said, they still have a little bit of time to be able to burn through before they can start feeling really confident. That's why Twisted Minds are taking these rotations, are being a little bit longer, a little bit more hesitant in how they approach this fight. Pushing through Krondop's shield, the wall is good. Kind of actually stops Krondop's charge, but it does mean that he's able to find the drop down and look for that Shatter. It lands onto KSA, the Blizzard to confirm that they're able to find the Ramatra zoned away from the rest of his team. Nutella's Soundbar not there in time to save them.
Wait, but Quartz still wants to win this. The lamp is about to run out. The stick grenade comes out, but the Suzu. Oh my God, Slay keeps Quartz in this fight with that Suzu, although he loses his own life on the opposite side. But as long as Quartz is in this fight, you know, this is always winnable for the side of Twisted Mind. Has that Lucio pocket against the opposite side. Now KSA is back in this fight. Has the overclock. Both teams still want to win this. Naga just dropped down. It looks like he's trying to stagger himself. He's eventually going to fall. Overclock was popped by Quartz when that was already a fight win.
That is really unfortunate for Twisted Minds. They are not going to have overclock in this next fight. Team Pep's going to be very happy about that one, especially because Hybrid is coming in with that Deadeye, and the one thing that could have chunked through that hyper armor would have been the full blitz of the overclock coming out from Quartz. He does, however, still have the high ground. He can try and build up that real ult fire, pushing onto that Reinhardt shield and trying to catch out Kelix, who's extraordinarily low and cannot go down before Steinberg gets invested, but Hybrid with the snipe onto Quartz takes the Sojourn out. However, the fight's going on the payload, Dustin. Team Peps get caught in the blizzard.
Oh my God, the Blizzard does just get Hybrid through that beat drop of Kelix, what was perfectly timed. And now Krondov goes down lower. Twisted Minds, they want to reset this a little bit. Yeah, they're trying to regroup now. And Moxie, I swear to God, if we had like a Hybrid looking up statistic against anybody on the high ground, just how many times he gets those kills, feels like it's 100%. And now Naga has that Mayult on the engage, onto KSA. No time left. Charge comes through. KSA already half HP. Mayult freezes him. And Twisted Minds, Yubi's delaying. They're pushing the card a little bit, but yeah, he's gonna back onto there. And this is not bad for Team Peps.
Yeah, Team Peps do have control of that high ground. There's still 20 seconds left, so Twisted Minds do have the opportunity to try and activate that overtime. But Team Peps are just pushing them aggressively back. It's going to be Hybrid moving forward on that Cassidy, denying them the approach from the high ground, just playing around that payload, knowing Defense Matrix is going to be that, but it's going to be burnt out, especially with the Reinhardt charge connecting onto the Diva and allowing that Deadeye to zone out every single squishy from Twisted Minds, who have no choice but to hide away until the ultimate's gone.
Here comes that Tracer. It's even fight. KSA hasn't lost mech deck, which is huge, by the way, for Twisted Minds. No ultimates besides Krondov Shatter, so this could be an absolutely nasty shanty in that overtime. They know what's coming up. Yubi's just trying to delay it over towards the backside. No deaths just yet. Both teams nervous. On the flank is Hybrid. Now decides to regroup towards his team. And Quartz from across the map snipes out Zerion, who was building that window. Shatter lands, but onto who? It looks like just Yubi, so they traded out 1-for-1. KSA's low is on the cart, but it's Quartz over the top with the overclock. KSA got Krondov, body shot, then headshot, after headshot. Quartz cleans it up, and Twisted Minds are going to be your Pro-Am qualifier champions.
It looked so good for Peps. It looked so good for Peps. But the turning point in that fight is that KSA holds on to mech long enough for the stall to come through. The fact, unfortunately, that Krondov has to use the Reinhardt Shatter to connect onto Yubi so that the Tracer can't just keep blinking and recalling, and that card contested and going after the backline means that Quartz is free to open up with the overclock and find free. And instantly, in the face of that Sojourn ultimate, because the Baptiste had gone down so early, because Sound Barrier had to be used in his absence, there is no sustainability, there is no option for Peps to be able to reposition away from the overclock, because if they do, they walk away from the objective, and Twisted Minds puts it in regardless.
That's a rough feeling for Peps in that situation. That means they won't be taking home the extra 25 hundo that your boys over at Twisted Minds are winning. So $5,000 in their pocket, and both teams are still qualified. So at the end of the day, you know, I'm sure Peps are disappointed in this result. However, at the end of the day, they'll be playing against Pro-Am teams in the future, in the coming weeks, and that's going to be an exciting match that we're going to see. But before we end the broadcast today, guys, we will have an interview with one of the victors of Twisted Minds, and it's always a pleasure talking to them. So we'll see you guys after a short break.